We've done it. Yet again. Here we are. Yeah, break it down. What? Yeah, what? What was my weekend like, man? Like, capitalism, right? Capitalism. Got Sunday off. Did some recording on this audiobook that I'm working on. The audiobook has turned into like a whole thing for me too, because it's like I can successfully record on the rig that I've got right here if I record at like midnight, because the holdup now is external noise. Like I don't have like a proper like soundproof booth room or anything. And that's my next project. I want to get like a cheap computer, right? I want to get a cheap computer that I can get into this booth, or not into the booth. Like, and I'm literally going to convert one of my closets into like a soundproofed booth area. This is the long-term project, right? So that I can do recordings during the day. Because for real, like, I tried to do some recording today and there's just a dog barking. Like, literally just like a dog barking. And it's like, oh, well, that's the end of that. Can't do any recording. Finally, the dog stops barking. So I'm like, oh, okay, so I'll start recording. Somebody literally is, like, working on their car outside my window right here. And not even to mention, like, if it's windy, if it's, like, a particularly windy day, like today is, and the sound picks it up. Hey, Barnabas, how you doing, bud? Good to see you today. And so, looks like the wind has gone down, but of course now I've got to do the stream. It's all good in the hood, man. It's all good in the hood. Hey, Ega, how you doing? Don't know if I've seen you in a while, Ega. How you doing? Good to see you. And then on top of that, like my dog is about to come back, and so now I've got to try to do this recording with my dog. And even when he's asleep, he's like a little snorty guy. So anyway, it's an ongoing saga. But at least when I finally get it recorded and I upload it onto the website, it's accepting my files. Everything is good. The author listens to them and she's happy with them. So it's just about, the lesson is just keep swimming. Hey, Harry, how you doing? Right? Like straight up like Dora the fish, or Dory. What was her dumb name from Finding Nemo? Just keep swimming, right? It's totally true. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. It'll all work itself out. One thinks, or one hopes, or one dreams. Who knows? Who knows? Glad to see all you guys today. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you had a good weekend. I've got quite a few good articles today, actually, which is nice. Last couple of shows, I felt like it's been very memey. Like, not really much in terms of, like, actual articles or anything. So, before we get into any of that, though, today's number is... I'm going with a 5. Feeling like a 5 today.
Here we go for today's number. It's January 10, 2022. 10 balls. Each ball has a number.
Hey, Ezial, how you doing, bud? Good to see you.
Numbers 1 through 10.
We got a 4 and a 9.
Swirl the numbers.
Swirl the numbers. My absolutely favorite moment.
Pick a number.
Here we go. Who's going to be the big winner?
Today's number is 4.
Barnabas, you can see the future. Barnabas nails a 4. Now, normally I go grab the guitar and play a song. My voice is like, it's not hurt or anything, but it's like I can feel it. It's like right on that level, and I really, really can't afford to hurt my voice today. So I'm going to sidestep the song today and just focus on the regular news stuff. Yeah, Barnabas can see the future. Good. Is it? Can you see the future like distantly, or and all I see is communism? Communism everywhere. Oh well, good. From Lisa and the Dirtbag Left PhD, we recycled but still got climate change. We worked hard but never became wealthy. We have insurance but can barely afford healthcare. We vaxxed, masked, and still got COVID. We voted over and over but change never came. Starting to think maybe we're not the problem here. Yeah, I think Lisa's onto something. I'd like to open up with this article from The Atlantic. Millennials didn't kill the economy. The economy killed millennials. The American system has thrown them into debt, depressed their wages, kept them from buying homes, and then blamed them for everything. This is by Derek Thompson. He's a staff writer at The Atlantic and author of the Work in Progress newsletter. He's also author of Hitmakers and host of the podcast Plain English. When a staid American institution is declared dead, the news media like to haul the same usual suspects before the court of public opinion. The Millennial Generation. The 80 million plus people born in the United States between the early 1980s and the late 1990s stand accused of assassinating various hallmarks of modern life. The list of the deceased includes golf, department stores, the McDonald's McWrap, and canned tuna. Millennials tore up napkins, threw out mayonnaise, and mercifully disposed of divorce and Applebee's before graduating to somewhat postmodern crimes. Have millennials killed serendipity? With the national murder rate in long-term decline, it may even be said that millennials are killing. But according to a new report by economists at the Federal Reserve, this genre of news analysis is pure fiction. When researchers compared the spending habits of millennials with those of young people from past years, such as the baby boomers and Gen Xers, they concluded that millennials do not appear to have preferences for consumption that differ significantly from those of earlier generations. They also found that millennials are less well off than members of earlier generations when they were young, with lower earnings, fewer assets, and less wealth. Millennials aren't doing in the economy. It's the economy that's doing in millennials. My history with the accused goes back several years. In 2012, I published a column in The Atlantic with Jordan Weissman, now a writer at Slate, called The Cheapest Generation. That headline, which got us in trouble because it was the only thing most people read, was a bit of a misdirection. The deeper question of the piece was whether the Great Recession might permanently reduce young people's taste for houses and cars, two of the most vital engines of the economy. For years, various outlets, including The Washington Post and Pew Research Center, continued reporting that young people were buying fewer cars and houses than those in previous generations at a similar point in their life. In 2016, about 34% of Americans under 35 owned a house. When boomers and Gen Xers were under 35, about half of them did. But the fact that young people are buying fewer houses and cars doesn't prove that they want fewer houses and cars. It might mean they simply can't afford them. That latter conclusion is now supported by research from the Federal Reserve. Fed economists found that the depressed rate of home ownership amongst millennials was entirely about income and affordability. Young boomers and young Gen Xers made significantly more money at a similar point in their life cycle, they said, and controlling for income and employment wiped out all generational differences. Just as important, homes in the United States are less affordable than they used to be, according to the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard University. The typical sale price of an existing single-family home in 2017 was 4.2 times greater than the median household income. That's 30% higher than in 1988. It's even worse in some cities. Since the late 1980s, price-to-income ratios have more than doubled in metro areas such as Miami, Denver, and Seattle. In San Francisco, the median house price doubled in just 5 years to more than 1.6 million. That's a lot of foregone avocado toast. On the car front, news reports sometimes find that the average age of new car buyers is quickly rising, which makes it sound like young people are ditching their ride. But as the Fed economist Christopher Kurtz has shown in several studies, that factoid is somewhat misleading. Young people actually buy the same number of cars per capita today that they did in 2005. At the height of the housing bubble, the average age of car buying is going up almost entirely because Americans older than 55 are buying more new vehicles than they were 20 years ago. In 1995, Americans over 55 bought about 1/3 of all new cars. Today, they're buying almost 2/3. It's also true that millennials spend less than the previous generations on transportation, but everybody is spending less. Total transportation spending has declined as a share of the typical household's budget by almost 5% in the past 30 years, according to the Fed. Perhaps that's because people hold on to their car for longer, or own a more efficient car that requires fewer tune-ups, or maybe that's the result of the declining cost of new vehicles under the North American Free Trade Agreement, which shifted some auto manufacturing work to Mexico. The economists ultimately found no evidence that millennials have preferred for vehicle purchases that are lower than those of earlier generations. Case closed. It's typical for millennials to bear blame for dramatic cultural and economic changes when their only crime is behaving like everybody else. For example, last year the Wall Street Journal published a report that cited young people for killing grocery stores. The proof? Consumers ages 25 to 34 are spending less at traditional grocers than their parents' generation did in 1990. Seems pretty damning. But upon closer examination, the stagnation of grocery stores is a complex story that implicates just about everybody. Americans of all ages are relying more on convenience stores, such as CVS, and superstores, such as Walmart, for food to eat at home, and those institutions aren't typically counted as grocers in government data. Also, Americans of all ages are eating out at restaurants more. The group shifting its spending towards restaurant the fastest, it's not 20-somethings, it's people over 65. In the biggest picture, from cars and houses to restaurants and grocers, millennials aren't serial killers, they're serial scapegoats. If there is one category in which the generation born between the early 1980s and the late 1990s really is different, it's politics. Young people are not only to the left of the country, but also to the left of the previous generations of young people. In national elections, millennials have voted for Democrats over Republicans by unprecedented margins. They are far more open to various strands of socialism, including social democracy and democratic socialism. As I wrote in summarizing their political views in 2016, millennials sense that they are both America's impoverished generation and its moral guardians, absent on the payroll but present at the revolution. Why would young people feel such revolutionary fervor? Maybe it's not because millennials have rejected the American dream, but rather because the economy has not only blocked their path to attaining it, but punished them for trying to. Millennials are the most educated generation in United States history to date. They bought into the social contract that said everything will work out if first you go to college. But as the cost of college increased, millions of young people took on student loans to complete their degree. Graduates under 35 are almost 50% more likely than members of Gen X to have student loans, and their median balance is about 40% higher than that of the previous generation. And what has all that debt gotten them? Lower earnings, fewer assets, and less wealth, according to the Federal Reserve's paper's conclusion. Student debt has made it harder for millions of young people to buy a home, since holding debt is associated with a lower rate of home ownership, irrespective of degree type, as Fed economists wrote in a previous study. In other words, young people took on debt to pursue a college degree, only to discover that the cost of college would push the American dream further from their grasp. Is it any wonder that millennials are eager to overthrow a system that has duped them into a story of permanent progress, thrown them into debt, depressed their wages, separated them from the trappings of adulthood, and then, for good measure, blamed them for ruining canned tuna? When the 20th century sociologist James Chowning Davies studied the political convulsions of France and 20th century Russia, he observed that the conditions for revolution are ripest when a prolonged period of economic and social development is followed by a short period of sharp reversal. These revolutions occurred, he said, when a large group of people felt that reality had suddenly fallen short of their expectations for social or economic development. Millennials were promised rising wages, homes, and cars. They got 140 characters. Okay, fine, 280 characters. That's nothing to live on, but it's just enough to efficiently articulate one's despondency alongside 80 million frustrated peers, all of whom are exasperated with a system that keeps finding new ways to brand its young economic victims as cultural criminals. Like, this whole system should get fucked, right? This whole system should get fucked forever. And anybody who defends it, I consider to be evil. Like, I don't consider them to be duped or wrong or mistaken or misinformed. I consider you evil now. Like, it's obvious what is happening. It's extremely clear what is happening. And we're not doing anything to ameliorate it. Like, we're doing absolutely nothing to ameliorate it. And in the United States, it's embarrassing. Like, Joe Biden could literally cancel student debt with the stroke of a pen. He could literally write a piece of paper that says, he could take like a fucking crayon. All student debt is canceled. Joe Biden. Done. And it's over. And it's over. You got it, bud. But he won't, and he doesn't. And there's a reason for it. Right? Because he doesn't work for us. There is another article that I have here. Oh, come on. Oh, I had it. It was right in front of my face. Come on, I didn't get rid of it. Looks like I got rid of it. But there's another article that just came out that says the new research is that none of our voting patterns are having any effect. Right? That the opinion of the populace, what we actually want, right? What we actually want is not even paid attention to whatsoever. CIA uncovers Chinese plot to just sit back and enjoy the collapse of the United States. Like, the system isn't responding to what we're saying. The system isn't responding to what we're asking for. The system isn't responding at all to us any longer. We are asking the system over and over and over again, hey, can you please respond to these crises and these catastrophes? And it refuses to. And it refuses to because it's become completely beholden to a small group of oligarchs, if you want to use a nice term, right? But these people have disconnected from reality completely. They've lost the ability to discern between what is real and what is false. And that's true no matter how you're voting these days. It doesn't matter who you vote for. The system itself cannot respond rationally. It's not capable of it. This is why we are building a revolutionary movement. This is the reason why millennials and Gen Z and any other generation that comes after us, right, whatever name we want to give them, will join the revolution, because the system itself has abandoned us. And it's abandoned us in favor of what exactly? Like, for real, like what are we gaining? What are the positives now? Like, that there's a boomer generation that gets to retire comfortably, I suppose. Like, the comet is literally coming. Like, it's right fucking there. You can easily see it. It's obviously heading towards us. And whether you want to call that climate change or income inequality or however you would like it, the comet is coming. And we're just ignoring it. Or more specifically, the populace is funneling its energy down dead ends. And those dead ends, more and more, appear to be the electoral system itself. That the electoral system itself literally cannot respond. All it can do is pretend as though the comet is an externality. That's how it talks about it. That's how its surrogates talk about it. That the comet that is going to smash into the earth is an externality. What's real? Taking money, putting it into financial markets, and getting more money out of it. That's what's considered real in our society. Like, what we are doing is despicable. It's disgraceful. And the people who support it and the people who pretend as though everything is fine are evil. They're not mistaken. They're not presenting an alternative worldview. They are abandoning their children for money. That is what is happening. Like, if we do not protest, if we do not surround the halls of power, we will be destroyed. The comet will hit us. It is obvious. And more you're starting to see, like, even the official people themselves, even the corporate media sites themselves are beginning to acknowledge it. Like, pretend time is over. And we have to really start asking of our mainstream media, why are you not publishing almost daily articles asking why our political class refuses to respond rationally to these crises? Like, where is the rational response to the housing crisis? Where is the rational response to the climate change crisis? Where is the rational response to the income inequality crisis? Where is any rational or reasonable response? Why is our media not even asking that question? Here's one that gets published in this gets published in the Star, but it's from the Stony Creek News originally. Canada's income inequality continues to grow and is unsustainable. While sitting inside your home experiencing the latest COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, let this piece of news sink in. According to the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, a left-leaning think tank that identifies Canada's 100 highest-paid CEOs each year, the country's top executives' compensation jumped in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, reaching the second highest level in the country's history. Those 100 executives earned an average of $10.9 million in 2020, an average of $95,000 more than what they were paid in 2019, and 191 times more than what an average worker makes. Early estimates reveal that half of CEOs' compensation will jump due to the stock market boom during the pandemic. The report stated that changes in bonus pay, such as direct cash bonuses, payment through company stock, and options to buy future stock at set prices, were cited as the reason behind the CEO compensation increases. The report also took note that in July 2021, changes by the federal government limited a 50% tax reduction on stock options issued by certain employers to the first 200,000 rather. It meant that 71% of the year's highest paid CEOs saved $663.4 million last year. But workers can't take heart that starting January 1st, Ontario's minimum wage increased to $15 per hour, up from $14.35, benefiting an estimated 760,000 people across the province. The minimum wage will subsequently increase every October according to the inflation rate. Anecdotal evidence right in Hamilton shows the impacts of trying to address the widening economic gap, such as ever-growing encampments in various public parks, the increasing homelessness, the rising number of the working poor, additional violence, thefts, and higher costs for social and healthcare programs. So how to close the inequality gap? There are 3 possible ways. Slow the growth rate of income at the top, accelerate the income growth rate at the bottom, or a combination of the two. Interestingly, former U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal attempted to create a balance through regulatory reform in financial and labor markets, more progressive taxation, introduction of Social Security, and economic stimulus. The vast program managed to stabilize the U.S. inequality dynamics for nearly 50 years. But in a globalized economy, can similar reforms do the same for Canada? At the very least, there is a need to clamp down on offshore banking by the wealthy and close loopholes that allow corporations and their executives to escape paying their fair share for supporting a democratic community. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives recommends federal intervention, such as capping the corporate deductibility, eliminating the capital gains inclusion rate, and stock option deduction for large companies, higher top marginal tax brackets, and a wealth tax. As our country endures another year of a pandemic, which has upended existing structures, there is a critical need to at least stop the widening inequality gap, and the first step begins at the top. But again, our power structure is incapable of responding rationally to this. If it was responding rationally, like the whole narrative throughout the pandemic, especially at the beginning, was we're all in this together, right? Which is total bullshit. We are not. We are obviously not all in this together. It is obviously not the case. And what we are experiencing are higher prices, lower pay, right? As inflation chews away at any gains we've made. This $15 minimum wage has been eliminated because of the rate of inflation. The cost of housing, the cost of rent, the rising cost of food, and the system that we are constantly funneling our energy into, which we expect to respond to all of this, refuses to. And at this point, it must be called a refusal. They have all of the evidence for what to do. They know what to do. It's obvious what needs to be done. It's obvious. And they refuse to do it. And it doesn't matter if you vote Conservative, Liberal, NDP, Green. It doesn't matter. The system itself is incapable of responding. And if we do not stand up and surround the halls of power and redraw our Constitution and tell these psychopaths to go get fucked, this will get worse. It will continue to decline. We will continue to fail. Income inequality will will spike along with homelessness, along with poverty. We'll have thousands of empty homes while people live in encampments. The comet's coming, guys. It's right fucking there. It's right fucking there. Yeah, capitalists keep calm and work on. Good to see you, Alex. Haven't seen you in a while. Glad to see you, bud. Hope things are going well. Imagine getting company stock when you're born. Robert Stan, don't think I've ever seen you here before, bud. Good to see you. Hope you're here to contribute. Internet guy's voice. I don't know, John. Sounds like tyranny if you ask me. Grumble, grumble. Yeah. Well, I mean, it is tyranny. That's what we're experiencing right now. The democratic systems, such as they exist, are theatrical. That's what they are for, right? We live in a kind of theatrical democracy at this point. That it truly does not matter how you vote. It truly does not matter. Like the upswell of organizations like the PPC, right? These are important cultural touchstones. But the truth is that when the PPC gets into power, they're going to act very much the same, right? Because the political system, the political power structure, is not what is actually in charge. That these people just end up working for the billionaire class, for the psychopath class. And they enact whatever legislation these people want. Take a look at the liberals, right? The carbon tax, the big climate change win that we were all supposed to be like, oh yay. Well, that was the fossil fuel industry that handed that to Justin Trudeau and he read it off a cue card, right? And the entire idea was so that instead of the costs of combating climate change actually going where it needs to go, which is on the fossil fuel industry and the psychopaths that run it, it's diffused into the populace. So it's the guy filling up his truck that's paying the tax and not the guy that's lying about the existence of climate change while increasing fossil fuel production. Like, I really am to a point where I'm starting to ask the question, what is it going to take? Like, what is it going to take? Like, do we need to wait until like 20% of the populace is on the streets homeless? Like, is that what it's going to take? Like, in the United States, there's already 600,000 homeless, right? Probably more by now. Like, and you take a look at the political system that's happening in the United States. Like, it's pretty clear that we're going to see another Republican Party. Yeah. I mean, there's a good deal of gullibility going on, if you ask me, right? That it's less about brainwashing and more just kind of people are gullible about it. You know, they genuinely want to believe. Would Canadians do anything if 20% of us were homeless? Probably not. Probably not, honestly. Like, we're an extremely gullible people. We really, really do believe anything we're told. Like, and the lies can be as extravagant or as banal as you would like, right? And there's just no skepticism and no desire to even look into it. Until the eternal fight turns into a quantitative change, in short, a rich enough person has to get burnt. Well, this is the thing, is that now your entire quote-unquote middle class that no longer exists, like, your doctors, lawyers, and engineers. Like, I have friends who literally sacrificed their whole life, like, on this pursuit of, like, pay off the student loans, have a couple of kids, be a working professional, save up enough and get a house. And now they're saying, nope. Like, they're going to have to move out of the city if they want to get a house. They're going to have to uproot their entire life and they're going to have to go somewhere else. Like, that's what's going to happen for them if they want to get that house. And these are people who like literally are like professors at the university, like assistant professors at the University of Toronto, and like lawyers on Bay Street. Like it doesn't get much higher up the chain than that. Like you're literally like talking about like who's higher up on the chain than that, right? Literally a CEO of a company is probably the only person who's higher up on the chain. So like you're literally telling us that the only people who are going to actually be able to afford houses are CEOs and hereditary wealth holders. Like it's done, it's gone. And like so the upper middle class has been decimated and has been told to go get fucked. And everybody below them has been told to get fucked. Like, what's it going to take? All I have to give is my labor power, so I'm waiting for my Fidel to arrive. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe you are the Fidel we were waiting for all along, Barnabas. This is why I tell everybody, right? The problem with this channel is that we're all very well spread out. That's the problem, right? But it is up to each and every one of you to find the movement that's in your neighborhood, to find the movement that's in your city. And if no such movement exists, then congratulations, it's you. You're the one that sets the date. You're the one that makes the flyer. You're the one that distributes the flyer. You're the one that shows up on the day. And when you do all of that and nobody comes, you cry about it here, and I cry along with you. Because I want you to succeed, and I want you to make that happen. And then you do it again, and you keep doing it over and over and over again, because we have nothing left. Like there's nothing else. Like, and the political class isn't going to suddenly have a come to Jesus moment, right? Like the political class isn't going to suddenly go like, oh yeah, all of this stuff we've been doing for the last 40 years, it turns out it's wrong. And it hasn't been helping. Yeah, we should probably do different things. Like, maybe they'll talk that way in order to convince gullible rubes to keep voting for them. But, I mean, take a look at these liberals. Like, take a look how they're pushing forward just the most egregious legislation they can possibly get away with. Like, they're just pretending to give a shit. It's gotten quite obvious. And yet, we're all just supposed to go along with it. The apocalypse is here already. The pandemic response alone shows the cartoonish incompetence of our leaders to make the rational decision on any front. We are abandoned. Bolster your community. Yeah, we need several comets and asteroids to hit us. The sooner the better. We are in a literal Hades hole right now. It's beyond repulsive and sickening. Yeah, I can see myself homeless and dead within 5 years. Yeah, like that's where it's going. I used to rent one bedroom to help pay the rent, and I was surprised when a UBC professor came to check my room. I'm talking about in shared accommodation in an apartment, not even a house. Yeah, that's where it's going. Right? And the conservative and liberal parties continuously come in and they continuously attack professors and teachers and lawyers and doctors and all of these guys, right? Like this idea that there is even such a thing as like an upper middle class or a middle class, it's a joke. It's a total joke. The extraction project is reaching its conclusion. They are going to extract every penny. And if that means you can't buy a loaf of bread, they do not care. They don't care at all. Like, the only thing they care about is that you're going to work and being compliant. That's it. You can think what you want. You can say what you want to whoever you want. You can do what you want. You can be what you want. You want to be gay? You want to be trans? You want to be black? You want to be any of the... Yeah, off you go. Absolutely. Show up to work at 9 a.m. And as long as you keep doing that, while they extract as much wealth as they possibly can out of the society until it collapses, then they don't care. Like, they don't care. And as long as you keep voting liberal and keep voting conservative or keep voting Democrat or keep voting Republican, they're happy. They don't care. Like, we are witnessing a collapse of a civilization. That is what we are witnessing. And the only thing that we can do at this point is to stop participating in it. Like, can we actually prevent its collapse? Unlikely. Unlikely. But we don't need to contribute. Now, John, go easy on the self-made millionaires. You know how hard they had to work for those investment seeds? It took like 2 phone calls. God, yeah, exactly. No, and these people are despicable. Like, they're despicable. I watched just recently, there was some millionaire trust fund baby, did a television show where he went and he said, I'm going to give away I'm going to have no money and I'm going to go be homeless. And I'm going to go see if I can be homeless, go from homelessness to $1 million in a year, right? That was his shtick, right? That was the whole premise of the show. And literally in the first 10 minutes, some stranger, right, gifts him an RV. He just gets hold of a trailer, like right out the gate. He sleeps one night on the street. And then some stranger gives him like the very definition of, he fixes his major problem. He doesn't have a home, right? And then from there, the guy's just like, oh yeah, and then I use my internet connection. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, he immediately had access to electricity, shelter, housing, right? And it's like, yeah, you can do a lot if you have access to like these basic things, but that's like the fundamental definition of being homeless, dude. Like, and the audacity of it, right? It's extremely obvious that he spent one night on the streets. It was too hard for him, and so his daddy gave him an RV or something, right? Just like a little thing so that they could kind of like save face and pretend, like, yeah, any homeless person gets this, right? But like the viewers are so gullible, and the ownership class is so psychotic that he gets away with it, right? And at this point, there's no miss, right? There's no miss. Any group you can get a hold of. Any group you can get a hold of and organize with, right? Any group that you can show up to their event, put your energy in, right? Like, because we can't just sit idly by. We can't just allow this to occur. Like, I certainly don't. And I don't think anybody else should either. Now, it's a bad sign when health authorities are calling on the public to accept mass illness and death for the sake of maintaining full economic output, while the rich still haven't lost a penny and are, in fact, richer than ever. Like, this is what I'm talking about, right? Like, if the wealthy were also losing money, like if the wealthy were also experiencing a decline, if the wealthy were also in this position where like, oh goodness, things are going so badly and there's a decline in the economy and all this kind of stuff, right? Then you could legitimately be like, oh yeah, we are all in this together, right? Let's work through this, all this kind of stuff. But that's not true. We are being abandoned to this pandemic. And the liars and the frauds that are responsible for maintaining whatever you want to call this, because it's not an economy, right? Like this is strictly like a religious ideology on the level of a cult. That's why I call it a death cult, because it's not an economy, right? An economy implies a certain level of circularity, right? An economy implies like the actual interest of distributing scarce resources, the interest of actually having like a government that prints the currency so that cycles it into the society so the society can get the resources that it needs, right? But that's not what happens. That's not how it works, right? because this isn't an economy. Like, and when they start talking about the economy, they're literally talking about like the stonk line. They're literally like rich people feelings. Like that's it. We're talking about a group of insane psychopathic illiterates who pretend as though what is happening is an economy. And the worst the actually worst part of it, in my view, is that the university systems that exist in North America have been churning these illiterates out. And so you have people who are like PhD economists who literally have never read anything, who are illiterates and are stupid. Like, stupid. And I'm talking about like well-known people like Paul Krugman. Like, Paul Krugman is an idiot. He's fundamentally stupid. Listen to him talk for 30 seconds. You'll be like, this guy's dumb. Like, fucking stupid. He did one of these masterclass things, right? He did one of these masterclass things. I'm sure you know about masterclass, right? Artists and all this kind of stuff go on masterclass, and then you can take their classes. Like Ramsey did one, like all this kind of stuff. Paul Krugman did one. He sounds like a fucking moron. Like, he sounds like a total illiterate boob who's just winding into stupid narration and stupid stories that connect to nothing and are detached from everything. Like, he'll show you the like supply and demand and all the curve and all that stupid shit that they teach you day one of Economics 101. But like, he doesn't know anything. He's a moron. And people like Larry Summers, people like this. So even if we cleanse the establishment of these people, well, the structure itself is still churning these guys out, right? Like your Milton Friedmans. Like, Milton Friedman is actually evil. Like, he's actually like a little evil troll who's completely fine with enacting like a genocide, right? But no, we're not all stupid. Like, there are people who are actually interested in economics as a scientific, like, materialistic pursuit, right? There are people who are actually interested in facts and evidence and learning and this sort of stuff. But we're just, like, not interested in that here in the West. Good to see you, by the way, JC. I gotta be careful what I say. JC's in the chat. JC's 3 for 3 for calling me out, which I actually really value, because gotta keep me honest. The anti-intellectual movement we're experiencing in the West is gaining momentum since the neoliberals need clueless, compliant drones to sustain their existence. Yeah. Well, and America has always had like an anti-intellectualism about it. Like, it's always despised the intellectuals and the arts, right? Always. Like, and it's very, very important for the capitalist class to destroy the arts in this society. Or else you end up with something like Don't Look Up, which is like a very effective artistic expression of what we are all experiencing, right? Using science fiction in a very effective way to articulate like our inability to respond to these crises. And you can't have that, right? You can't have artists accurately articulating what's happening to the society. You can't have people actually analyzing the society or analyzing things in a big meta way and accurately articulating what they're seeing. So you have to destroy them, and you have to destroy the edifice. And then you need to fund and raise up the frauds and the hacks, people like Milton Friedman, people like Paul Krugman, right? Hey Mark, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. It's much like slave societies. The trade is mostly between the slave owners and from nation to nation. Yeah. And like, that's the, and again, like, it pays to remember, especially in America, and it's no less true here in Canada, but it's more explicit in America, that the structure of their democracy exists to respond to the rich exclusively. That the goal of the ruling class and the goal of the system was to keep power within the wealth of the nation. It's in the Constitution. And so what that means is that the Congress people and the senators are only really negotiating with one another about how to split up the spoils. That's it. They're not interested in how to actually improve the society in any meaningful way. And in the United States, like, so much of the decision making is really does revolve around, like, oh, we can't have a universal healthcare system because black people will get it. Like, you can't have that. Wow, chance to win a GoPro 10. How about that? Never show me that. I don't even know where that came from. Probably from this. Shut this down. You see the vid of the CEO who said it's not our job to provide an income, we provide a job, and if people don't like, there's an open market to find better, or some BS. Yeah, that classic, like, oh yeah, the free market will decide. Forget about the fact that the billionaire class owns the market, right? Like, forget about that. Pay no attention about the fact that the market itself is controlled and owned, right? And like, and if you're gullible enough to just buy into this idea that, like, oh, just get a better job. Like, that's essentially all he's saying. Just get a better job, right? Well, who owns the job market? Who's offering the jobs in the first place, right? It's not really the populace, although in a stable, actually functioning economy, it would be, right? No, it's the people who are getting the money. It's these gatekeepers, right? These worthless capitalists who have control over the means of production, who are withholding food and shelter from the populace, right? Like, that's what's going on. And it's not like I'm out in kooky left field here. Like, this is Abraham Lincoln was talking about this kind of shit, right? Like, this is well established and well understood. The thing is that the cult can't actually admit what's going on, and they can't actually engage in the conversation honestly. Because if they did, then it would make it very clean and very plain about what's going on. People like Henry Ford. Like, Henry Ford has this famous quote, which is, it is best that the American people do not understand how their economy works, for if they did, there would be a revolution by the morning. Like, the system is ruled by people who are illiterates, who don't know anything, who are detached from reality, and who spend all their time going to, like, Jeffrey Epstein's sex island, right? Mass formation hypnosis. I want to know exactly what that is. Because I describe what's happening as a hysteria. Like, it's definitely a hysteria. I've heard this before. Somebody said this recently. Oh yes, this is Robert Malone. And there's something to it. Like, it is just a hysteria what we're experiencing. And this idea that we can just, like, put our head down, get a better job, right? We need another GameStop stock market scandal, only this time bring all the sociopath billionaires down to their knees and transfer all the money to the working class. Like, this is the thing, is that the money isn't what matters, right? If all the money did get transferred to the working class, within the year it would all be back, right? Because it's the means of production. It's who owns the means of production that matters. That's what matters. Like, I don't care if I have $100 billion, but I own Amazon, right? Like, oh, okay, oh, my $100 billion went away. Well, thanks for all the money back as you buy the things, right? And then within a year, you're back where you started. And because that's the way the system is structured. That's the design of it. It's supposed to do it this way. Yeah, if there was one message I wish we could get across, is needing a job to survive is not freedom. Yeah, exactly. Like, this society has a real perverse view of what is freedom. And, like, when some people say freedom, they mean selfishness, right? They mean what I think matters most, right? It's just who we are as a people. And it seems to me like the only way that we're going to be able to face this is to do what they did in the 60s, do what they did in the 30s, surround the halls of power. Like, it's the only way that we're going to actually get anything done or move forward in any meaningful way. Ownership is an artificial bottleneck, bridge for trolls to live under. Absolutely. All right, moving on. Canada has told the US that it's willing to help with potential deterrence measures against Russia, which could include sanctions to de-escalate the crisis in Ukraine. So this is like this idea that you're just going to put sanctions on Russia and that'll somehow like resolve something. Like, it's just more isolationism. And like, more and more of these liberals are making it really clear that they are happy to isolate themselves with the United States. That as the United States begins to isolate itself from the rest of the world and is more and more isolated, like, we're going to go down with the United States. Like, and these liberals are happy about that. Like, that's what they want at this point. Yeah, humans are supposedly the smartest species, but we're the only one that has to work jobs. Yeah. Well, because the skill set that we have is actually not intelligence, right? Like, that's an enormous misnomer, right? Like, the thing that separates us from all of the other creatures is not intelligence. And more we're beginning to see that that's the case. Like, there are more and more societies and cultures and nations that are declaring, like, octopus and dolphins as being sentient and intelligent. And there's a lot of evidence on the table to show that, like, octopi are probably about as smart as we are, right? But we have the ability to articulate our abstract thoughts to one another and communicate them, right? So I can talk about, like, an idea, and it's something really simple, like a house, like just a structure, right? And I can talk about that, and we can both perceive that in an abstract space. And then we can draw it out and understand that this is an abstraction, right? Things like money exist in this abstract space where we communicate abstract ideas to one another and then have the abstractions. That's our primary skill. But just because we have that skill doesn't necessarily mean we're very intelligent, right? You could still have that skill and be a bunch of morons, right? Just a bunch of dumb idiots talking about an idea, and the idea itself could be extremely stupid, but you could still have the conversation. So, and of course we're going to say we're the smartest on the planet, right? Of course we're going to say that of ourselves. Like, doesn't make it true, right? It just means, like, we tell ourselves enormous lies all the time. Like, we tell ourselves, we told ourselves when we were committing a genocide against the First Nations people and enslaving the black population of Africa, we told ourselves that we were doing them a favor, that what we were doing was good, right? Like, we are legitimately, like, we are able to deceive ourselves in big and significant ways. Yeah, just get another job, leave your McDonald's job, go to Taco Bell, exactly, like that's any better. We're only 1% smarter than legit apes. I mean, and that, questionable, if you ask me. Like, for real, like, the thing that separates us from the apes is not our intelligence. It's our ability to communicate and understand abstract thought. Like, a monkey could come up with calculus or something, right? Or realize some deep thing, but he can't talk about it. He can't, like, communicate it in interesting ways. And we can make rockets. Imagine some entity 2% smarter. But again, we can only make rockets because we can have an idea and communicate that idea to another person who then can work with that idea in the abstract. Like, if apes started to do this, they would be able to build a rocket. Like, it takes teamwork, and it takes community, and it takes building and effort and time to do these things. But if you simply lack that skill, if you lack that attribute, you can't do it, right? Just like how a dog can't grab hold of a pen with his hand, with his paw, right? Because he doesn't have an opposable thumb. That it doesn't make us intelligent, right? Like, and jury's out. Like, jury's out. Like, what we are allowing happen to our society and to our planet, and what we are inflicting to our society and planet, is raising really, really big questions about our level of intelligence and our ability to be intelligent. Hey, Rusty, how you doing, bud? You should trademark Surround the Halls of Power. I wonder if I could. I'd be very surprised. Every single time somebody says Surround the Halls of Power, I'm like... I saw that rats that figure out how to escape a cage will first help the other rats escape before running off to freedom. Yeah. Like, there's lots of studies that are showing that animals have much more compassion and empathy than we do in this society. And that the problem is that it's the mass accumulation of wealth. That once you're able to disconnect from the concerns of everyone else, and then most importantly, create a vision of your own world around you, right? And which everyone responds to because they want your money, right? They want wealth too, right? Once you can do this, you cease to live in reality. Take a look at someone like Jeff Bezos. In my view, Jeff Bezos is exactly the exactly what I'm talking about. Here's a guy who has said on camera, in front of us, right, on paper, and is arguing for, let's take all of the polluting industries and put them into space. This is one of these ideas that sounds good if you're an idiot, right? Because the process of getting all of the polluting industry into space would absolutely destroy us completely. We would never recover from from attempting it. But a guy like Bezos wants to do it anyway, and no one's going to tell him no. No one's going to actually go, this is a dumb idea, dude. Like, this is an idea that maybe, like, if we could figure out a way to get into space without, like, massive, like, every single time Bezos shoots one rocket, one rocket, it emits the same amount of carbon, the same amount of pollution as the entire lives of 1 billion people. So 1 billion people's entire life is the same as a single rocket shot into space. How many rockets do you think they'd have to shoot into space to get that industry up into space? And forget about getting it up. How about getting it back down? Right? And transporting people and transporting resources and transporting food, transporting all this stuff up and down. Right? The project of doing it would destroy the species completely. It would destroy the ecosystem entirely. And Bezos is probably going to do it because no one is going to say no to him. And he is more interested in his utopian fantasy than he is in what is real or rational or reasonable. And we're all just going to, like, watch him do it. Seems like. Yeah, apes aren't starting world wars and using nuclear weapons against civilian populations. I mean, they've got more immediate concerns, I think. City by Clifford D. Simic should be required reading for everyone, in my opinion. Okay. Doug Fatty Ford patting himself in the belly for implementing a $15 an hour minimum wage. He says the best thing he's done since Buck a Beer was put into law. He's assuming he has the election in the bag. Well, I mean, his competition is so weak, right? Like, both the Liberals and the NDP are incredibly weak. Billionaire men are literally funding a project to shoot their into deep space. It's beyond satire. Yeah. Have a good one, Alex. Good luck out there. So, 3 Ontario nurses disciplined for social media posts related to pandemic launch in $1 million libel suit. 3 Ontario nurses who have faced discipline for their stances on the pandemic are suing the Canadian Nurses Association and a media outlet in British Columbia with a libel suit seeking $1 million. Now, the this raises an interesting thing for me, because it's extremely easy for me to believe that there is going to come a point where the vaccine creators, right, Pfizer, Moderna, all these guys, right, the manufacturers, like, they are going to lie to us. Like, that is 100% going to happen. And it's likely already happening. Like, I take a look. JC, it was you, and I think maybe Jared, you were in on this one. You pointed out nobody's died of Omicron. Like, nobody's dying of this, right? And Robert Malone shows us that they are attributing people, like, if you get shot and then you have like a positive COVID test, then you died of COVID, that kind of a thing, right? And there's definitely going to be a moment where, like, like, when the Spanish flu turned into the endemic that it did, and when the flu started to just, there was a flu season and all this kind of stuff, right? We lived with it, and we were just, like, living our normal lives. Nobody was even wearing masks, for God's sakes, right? And there is going to be a moment where COVID gets there, where COVID is just, it's COVID season, it's going around, right? And it's not killing anybody. It's not like an incredibly deadly, ridiculous, absurdist sort of a thing, right? But we're going to be told, batten down the hatches, right? Oh, careful now. Got to spend money on this vaccine, right? All this kind of stuff. Yeah, Omicron can lead to a worse mutation also. Yeah, no, and I don't disagree with that. Like, I don't. But will it? Is it? Has it? Right? Like, why should we be concerned about something that may occur instead of something that is occurring? And, like, and I'm not saying that we don't need to be careful, and I'm not saying that we don't need to be concerned about the health issues or anything like that. And but what I am saying is that it's definitely going to happen, that we are going to be lied to about the nature of this disease that's going through, so that they can make more money out of us. Like, that is definitely going to happen, if it hasn't already happened. And, like, the absurd levels of lying and deception that exist in the society now, you can never know what's real or what's false any longer. Like, how can we live in this society under these circumstances where we're just constantly being lied to? Like, this is the thing that I keep talking about over and over again. Like, we can't live this way. Like, I refuse to live this way in this society that's like this, where our leadership, our owners, like, they're not leaders. Calling them leaders is ridiculous. They're not leaders, they're owners. They own us, right? Our owners are just so unwilling to exist in reality, and so unwilling to even attempt to find any kind of general consensus, or even acknowledge that the general consensus that exists in the populace is something worth responding to. Like, how do we live this way, where everything that we're being told is essentially just a salesman attempting to sell a commodity? Yeah, how do you make money forcing everyone to stay home instead of work? Well, you make money by selling them the product that's supposed to protect them from the disease that may or may not be a concern in the first place. And at what point do we begin asking that these, like, isolation procedures and these stay-home procedures are just a way to ensure that we don't actually do what I've been suggesting, which is to surround the halls of power? Like, if we're all scared and cowering, isolated in our homes, then we're not surrounding the halls of power, are we? So are the people that are dying right now dying from the variant that mutated before then? That's what I understand. Anytime I've actually looked into it, and again, because things are so malleable, Amanda, and things are so in flux, I don't like commenting on COVID. I don't, because things are so in flux, right? And I don't want to make like a big gigantic proclamation about it, because things can change on a dime. But the evidence that I've been looking at, like, I take a look at the daily reports that come out of our hospitals, right? And I thought at first, oh yeah, there's been some Omicron deaths. For sure there's got to be. And then I believe it was JC challenged me on that, so I dug deeper. And in fact, no, there hasn't been any Omicron deaths. And then I found a news report that said Omicron death. And it was one of these, like, yeah, guy got in a car accident. And he died of being in a car accident while also having Omicron, so they declared an Omicron death. It's just like the lies and the overwhelming disinformation and just the straight bullshit. Like on Friday, this fucking story where, like, January 6th they killed a cop, and then they didn't. Like, it's not the case. It is a coincidence. Like, the guy was assaulted, yes, but then he goes and he dies of being a human, right? It's just a time thing. And the Democrats are having, like, minutes of silence over it. And you're like, what the fuck is even happening? Like, so you can't believe anything you're being told at all. Like, at all. And under these circumstances, like, there is going to be a moment where, sure, COVID is around. Just like the flu was around. Right? Sure. But we're going to be told that it's like, oh, it's the scariest, craziest thing ever. And it isn't. And it won't be. And I bet you anything, like, I haven't actually done this, so this is a speculative claim, just heads up. But I bet you if somebody showed you, like, the 2010 flu deaths versus the current COVID deaths, that they would probably look pretty similar to one another. Right? And the more and more and more we continue to empower these people who are obviously lying to us, the more and more and more the political apparatus that is actually the anti-vax or the anti-lockdown types, which I'm talking about the PPC, the more power they're going to get. Because they're the only ones actually saying it. I had to correct someone today who said unvaccinated are clogging hospitals. Article came out yesterday that there are now more vaccinated in hospitals in Calgary. Do you know the name of that article, JC? I'll search it. And I agree with this, like this narrative of vaccinated versus unvaccinated. I'm still seeing lots of things coming out that are attempting to blame the unvaccinated for what's happening. The unvaccinated are not the problem. They truly are not. They are a scapegoat. I can say this with clarity, right? That our ruling class is far more responsible for any of this than the unvaccinated are, right? And that's even based on, like, old data that I've seen, where, like, transmissibility amongst the vaccinated and the unvaccinated is the same. Like, it's the same. And yeah, and now the thing is sidestepping the unvaccinated. Yeah, it's like how you hear your whole life the story of Pocahontas and John Smith, and then one day you learn it was the opposite of what you were told. Yeah. Like fucking, like Disney's Pocahontas, right? Like, and the shocking one for me recently was the, no, but I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a bit uneven, right? Like, and that's the thing I think is that's what I'm looking for. Thanks, DM. It doesn't matter that it's a bit uneven, right? Like, even if it's a, like, 30-70 split, like, it's not enough to tip things over to be chaotic because of the unvaccinated, right? Vaccinated hospital patients outpace the unvaccinated. CTV News. Numbers showing majority of Alberta's COVID-19 hospital admissions are in vaccinated individuals don't tell the entire story. regardless of what conspiracy theorists believe. So they're in damage control. Albertans with at least one shot took over more hospital beds than those without this week. Yes, but the raw numbers are incomplete, and dive into it data shows being vaccinated may be more important now than ever before. As of Thursday, 217 unvaccinated Albertans were in hospital compared to the 282 patients with at least one shot. But almost 90% of the province has one dose, which means rate per 100,000 people is a more telling metric to measure admissions. So it looks like they're just changing the goalpost now, right? That before it was unvaccinated are the problem. Oh, but now, no, there's this other metric now that doesn't bear out. Pfizer CEO is trending on Twitter. Oh my God. By that standard, about blah blah. More than other variants, Omicron can still infect immunized populations. Yeah, I mean that's true. But like this is like crystal clear evidence, and they're just trying to change the narrative now. Like, this is crystal clear evidence. Like, yeah, totally unbiased reporting from CTV. Exactly. I think Global News report on 3 deaths from Omicron in Nova Scotia lately. I mean, Nova Scotia is reporting 3 COVID-19 related deaths. Like, notice this though, right? 3 COVID-19 related deaths, right? It's like COVID-19 adjacent. The deaths involve a man in his 60s in Eastern Zone, a man in his 70s in Northern Zone, and a man in his 80s in Central Zone. All 3 men contracted the virus. But like, did they have a heart attack? Like, did they have, like, how, like, what actually happened? Right? And they're just not telling you. They're just like, it involves it. Oh yeah, it involves it. And it's just, yeah, you're exactly right, JC. Notice this wording. Right? 3 COVID-19 related deaths. And it's like, well, related deaths is not the thing itself. Right? Like, and it's this, and this fellow Robert Malone has introduced a level of skepticism that I think has become reasonable. It is reasonable to be skeptical of this. It is reasonable to say, oh, are you just saying they died of COVID when they had like a heart attack? Like, I mean, it's an 80-year-old man, right? Like an 80-year-old man who like gets sick, right? And even if he got sick of like a flu, right? Of like a sickness that we all know of, which incidentally, the flu killed people, right? And like, that's some data I'd love to see. I would love to see like the Spanish influenza 2010. How many people was it killing versus now? Even Delta variant COVID, I'd like to know, right? Like, can we get a compare and contrast? Like, it's as this is moving forward and as we are seeing that these guys are lying about really small things, like it is getting to the point now where I'm starting to believe that these guys just want to lie. That like a situation happens and the question they ask themselves is, how can we lie about it? In what way can we inject a lie in here? And if somebody were to walk into the room as they were trying to find out how to lie about it and asked, hey, we don't actually need to lie about this. Why are we lying about it? They would probably just laugh and be like, because it's fun. Like, this is what I'm genuinely starting to believe about this. That, like, we are just being lied to because it gives them enjoyment. Period. Full stop. Like this lie that they the lie that during January 6th this cop got beaten to death or that he died because of his injuries or anything. It's like if they're willing to lie about something so banal and something so small in scale, then they're willing to lie about anything. And at this point, I've got to start believing that they're lying for fun. Yeah, what's the cause of death? Yeah, COVID-involved killing. Yeah. Hundreds of thousands used to die from all kinds of illnesses before COVID-19, but since 2020, everybody that dies, they said dies from COVID. Yeah. All three contracted the virus during this Omicron wave. Sneaky, they didn't say they contracted the variant. Yeah. More lies, more hysteria, more money in CEOs' pockets, mission accomplished. Well, and what's so frustrating, okay? Especially for someone like myself. Like, I want to know the truth. That's what I know. I don't care if I am wrong. Like, I don't. Like, if I believe something, or if I see something and I think, okay, this is what's going on, okay, and then if somebody says, no, John, this is what's actually going on, and shows me evidence that destroys what I'm saying, I'm not going to go off and cry about it, right? I'm going to go, oh, shit, okay, this is what's going on, right? Because I want to know what's true and what's real. And now I find I'm in a situation where I can't know. I can't know what's true or what's real. And there's no one to trust. There's no one I can look at. In this COVID conversation, there is literally no one that I can point to and say what this person is saying is true. Not one person. Like, when it comes to like social commentary, when it comes to economics, when it comes to like history, there are people that I can point to, right? Richard Wolff, Mark Blythe. Mark Blythe is a good one if you're still somewhat capitalist in your thinking, right? Why do I always blank on this guy? The guy that's got a bit of a lisp, he's always on Moderate Rebels. I'm always blanking on his name. It drives me crazy because he's really good. He was the guy who first introduced the concept to me that the financial institute is a parasite. Come on. Anyway, I'm sure the chat will figure that one out. And like Chris Hedges, right? Noam Chomsky, Michael Parenti. These are powerful commentators. Howard Zinn, right? Powerful historians, powerful commenters. Michael Hudson. Thank you, Jared. Michael Hudson. Really powerful. And everybody kind of has something like this where they can connect with somebody. But in this COVID conversation, there's literally no one. There's literally no one. And I hate that. I hate that more than anything. Right? It indicates to me a type of failure in our society that is deep, that is deeply entrenched. That when crises hits this society, the grifters come out. And we've just empowered them. We've empowered the grifters. We've empowered all of these grifters to be able to go around and just say what they want to sell whatever product they can. It's frustrating. What was that name you had there, Mocked? I was about to look that up. Jason who? If you care about this guy, dude, I want to know, because you're always on point. And Zizek, I gotta be straight with you, man. Like, Zizek's a bit of a just like a Gish Galop kind of guy. Like, he's kind of interesting to listen to, but like, I don't necessarily find him particularly important, would be the word that I would use. Like, sort of low level in my view. I think it's fucking annoying. Like, fucking annoying. I'm fucking annoyed. So, I'm just gonna move on. I'm just gonna fucking move on. Because there's nothing I can do about it. Like, who do I even talk to about this? I'd like to speak to the manager of the pandemic, please. Like, These guys are not telling us the truth. Like, they're not telling us the truth at all. That'll be later, Barnabas. That'll be later. Jason Unrule. Is it this fellow? Maoist Rebel News. Marxist Perfection. Okay, cool. I'm going to put that over here, and I'll take a look at it later. Let's all go surround the halls of power. Yeah, let's do this. If you look at the world and say, yes, there are enough homes for people. Yes, there is enough food for people. But if we give it away for free, they won't have earned it, and the economy will collapse. Then you have chosen money, a constructed medium of exchange, over living beings who only want to continue living in peace. And like, what the fuck are you even talking about? Right? When I was younger, people would talk this way, and it always, it's like you're listening to a piece of music and someone is playing a wrong note, right? And you know it's a wrong note. There's a dissonance to it, and you're just like, that's incorrect, right? And you just know it's incorrect because it sounds wrong, right? And why is it wrong? Because nobody has earned anything. We're literally randomly generated quantum beings that just come into this reality. And instead of erecting a system so that as people are randomly generated into it, there's a structure in place so food and shelter and like the base necessities for subsistence living are already in place so that they can get on with whatever it is we're here to do, by the way. Do you know? Because I fucking don't. Right? And instead of doing that, we create a system that says, you better earn it. You better earn it. Well, okay, and how do you earn it? Right? Do you pursue the like ephemeral existential reason for your existence? No. You sell your labor to a group of psychopaths who, incidentally, own the way food and shelter is distributed. Like, earned it. What are you even fucking talking about? Like, it's getting embarrassing. Like you've got to prove that you have the right to exist to these psychopaths. No, you don't. Do you know why you have the right to exist baked in? Because a quantum energy that creates and sustains all things has birthed you into the world. Do you think that that has more to do with you being here than some fucking psycho holding on to food and shelter and saying, prove it, prove it, prove it? Like, yikes. Mark, the bigger point is there are less unvaccinated than vax, so they can't be clogging it up. If the hospitals do get clogged up with vaccinated, did it accomplish the desired goal? Yeah. And we're just handing billions of dollars to these guys. It seems like capitalism is kind of mimetic OCD brain virus that turns people into authoritarian duelists bent on greed and domination, while using euphemisms to present themselves as purely good. Well, there's definitely like the number one the only thing that capitalists are actually good at is propaganda, right? They're extremely effective liars, right? And their propaganda is extraordinarily sophisticated and ubiquitous. And a big part of what makes the pro-capitalists very effective liars is that they want that their lies really inflate themselves, right? Like people who defend like meritocracy. Like meritocracy has got to be the most convenient bullshit to believe, right? Yeah, this is a meritocracy. I'm the best. That's the reason why I'm at the top, right? Completely ignore like evidence, facts, history, like any of that. Ignore the shit out of that, right? That doesn't matter. What matters is I was the best, right? A very convenient thing to believe about oneself. Yeah, in the US, the problem is hospitals lowered their capacities to save money, so they don't have enough rooms and beds. Yeah. Capitalists are also good at imperialism. Yeah, they're very good at violence, for sure. That's definitely the truth. Like, and the lie they tell about that is, oh, capitalism generates wealth, right? No, like capitalism steals wealth. Like that's what it does. Like it goes into other nations, enslaves the populace, has that populace do its work for it, and then takes the resources away and sends it back to its own country. And that's capitalism, baby. Like if capitalism ceased using violence, right? If it ceased using coercion and violence, then it would cease to exist as a system. It requires violence to function and work. And not in the sense of like, we had a revolution, right? Like they try to peg on the communists. But in the sense of like a daily act, like daily acts of violence. You are constantly and consistently ruddered up against daily acts of violence. And everybody you're talking to is a victim of this violence. That's why I hate going shopping. Like I hate going into grocery stores. I hate going into these shops, right? I've recently started going into my local Starbucks just so I can kind of get a sense of who these people are, right? And how they are interacting with me, right? But I hate it because I know that they're in a coercive position. They are in a work or starve situation. They have to work this job or they starve. Like, yikes. And we all just shrug and accept it. Oh, if you don't like it, just get a better job. No, just get a better job. They accomplish most of their imperialism by winning the info war first. It requires propaganda to get people to commit violence. Well, and big propaganda too. Like, white supremacy is a big one, right? The belief, first of all, that there is such a thing as the white race, right? Like, that's a huge piece of propaganda. And then the idea that there is such a thing as a supreme race, or that there is such a thing as a supreme nation, or that there is even a hierarchy of nations upon which one nation can stand as a ruler, right? Like it's all dumb propaganda bullshit. And the more you think about it, the stupider it gets. But like we're talking about a people who convinced themselves to ban a plant while smoking another plant. So, like, capitalists teach might make right, yeah, and attack people. Then if they defend themselves, capitalists use this as evidence that all people are violent to justify endless violence. Exactly. How dare they defend themselves? How dare they fight back? Self-fulfilling prophecy of domination. They succeeded in equating consumption with freedom, and so people cannot even imagine real freedom or real sustainability. Yeah. The propaganda is humanitarian-based now. Yeah. No, it always was, though. Right? We enslaved the black continent while saying we were doing them a favor, right? Oh, they were just backward savages, right? Now we're teaching them skills, right? Look at how much better their lives are now. It's always been that way. Yeah, Assad is massacring civilians and women in Afghanistan need us to protect them, yeah. And just, like, stop believing these guys. Like, this is what happened to me with the Uyghur genocide narrative. Like, they started talking about a Uyghur genocide, and I was like, probably not. Like, I immediately was just like, nah, probably not. Right? Like, I remember, like, the day I heard it, I made a video that day. I got really shit on. Like, a lot of people shit on me for it. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do a deeper dive on this. And sure enough, the deeper I dug, the more and more bullshitty the story became. Like, it's total fucking fraudulent bullshit. And can you imagine being a Chinese citizen? Like, can you imagine being a Chinese citizen and having people in North America accusing your nation of this? Like, it's fucking vicious. It's brutal. But you can't even consume. Right now you have freedom to starve. Exactly. Capitalism is just a euphemism for race war. Yeah, the white man's burden is now called nation building. Yeah. And like, well, take a look at the prison system in America, man. Like the American prison system is do I no, I don't have that particular video. But like, the American prison system has gone off the fucking rails. Like, or I mean, I guess if it hasn't gone off the rails, it's enacting exactly what it's supposed to be doing. But like, the Americans have like 20% of the world's prison population. Like, that's enormous. And most of that population is who? Oh, people of color? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, white supremacy's over, for sure. And it's just a way for them to continue the project of slavery. Like, that's it. Like, slavery is alive and well in America. It's called the United States penitentiary system. Like, scoop up black people, scoop up Latinos, scoop up people of color, right? Go every so often find your, like, white supremacist, white trash types, right? Arrest them on bullshit. Give them, like, huge sentences for bullshit, right? Oh, you stole a pair of hedge clippers, 20 years, right? Like, this kind of shit. And, like, and now you're getting stories like what happened to Rikers Island, for God's sakes, where they're literally picking people up and just dumping them at Rikers Island, not charging them with anything, not doing anything, and just leaving them there. Right? Yeah, Adrian Zenz has entered the chat. Exactly. Adrian fucking Zenz. What a piece of work that guy is. Like, literally walking around being like, God has told me to destroy, I'm on a mission by God to destroy China. And we're all like, yeah, source required. Like, pretty, like, imagine how depraved and like, it's just like, that kind of thing is just a way for a total psycho to be able to articulate his xenophobic genocidal proclivities without somebody actually calling him out for being a psycho, right? Oh, God told him, so it's okay, I guess. Like, and can you imagine, like, this God that he's espousing, right, is likely also responsible for creating Chinese people, right? Like, if God creates everything and sustains everything, and if that's your God, well, doesn't God also create Chinese people? And so God creates Chinese people and the Chinese nation, and then creates you, Adrian Zenz, and puts you on a mission to destroy the people that he himself is responsible for creating. Is this right? Is this what we're supposed to be believing? Like, no, it's far more likely that Adrian Zenz is a psychopath. That he just has this xenophobic desire to kill a race of people and is using religious expression as a way to cover for this. That's it. Yeah, just like Iraq WMDs. If you don't go along with it, you will be attacked at first, but vindicated later. Yeah. And Biden is partially responsible for the prison problem. Honestly, like, they all are. Like, they all are. Like, the privatization of the American prison system, and this is a problem that exists in Canada as well, by the by. But this is like a both parties, like, they all agree. Like, nobody's fighting against it. Like, there's no significant movement to actually move against this, because they all want it to be this way. Like, slavery has always been American. Like, it's what built America. Like, and capitalism is the same way. From day one, capitalism has been about slavery. They don't want to pay for your labor. They're not interested in it. Race is just a tool of capitalism. It isn't the foundation of their idea. You're right. It is just a tool. It's just another way. And if it stopped working, they would just find another way. U.S. Secretary of State Robert McNamara admitted the second Gulf of Tonkin incident was fake. Yeah. Park Yeon-mi admitted to changing her details. Yeah. Al Janabi admitted that his story of working at a chemical weapons plant for WMDs was fake. Yeah. Like, yeah. The hypocrisy of the U.S. being concerned about Muslim civil rights abuses would be comical if there weren't still people in Guantanamo. Yeah, who haven't even been charged with a crime. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's amazing how Guantanamo has just sort of been forgotten about, eh? Like, that shit's still happening. It's still going on. Right now. Like, and we're all just supposed to be like, oh yeah, America, greatest country in the world, yeah. Random question. In a communist or anarch-communist society, I assume there's no prison system. So what happens if someone does a murder or a rape? We're just going to beat them in the streets? Or... That is a great question, Amanda, honestly. Like, it actually is. Like, and cleanly right off the top, I don't know, right? Like, I do know that prison systems, as we conceptualize them as a form of punishment, right, don't work. They simply don't, right? This idea that someone did something wrong, so we're going to punish them. Things like the Nordic models are starting to show that the better way of thinking about it is that, a person is doing a crime because the circumstances around them, because the society around them has sort of funneled them down this path. And there are societies, like Jewish societies, for example, would take someone who does a crime and they would take them out of that community and they would relocate them. Right? Under the theory that the reason why you're doing these crimes is because you're surrounded by a community of people who are enabling you to do that, who are enabling you to live that kind of life, or who have funneled you into this way. So we're going to relocate you into a different place, right? Where you have the opportunity to rebuild your life without being enabled towards crime, right? And, like, there's something to that, I think, that, like, if the idea is about rehabilitation or about building stable societies, right? Like, then putting someone in a facility where they're just isolated and alone for a period of time and then just releasing them, and where do they go? Well, back to the same people, don't they? Right? So if they're arrested for, like, dealing drugs, well, where do they go? Probably right back to the drug dealers, right? Probably right back from where they came, right? So why do you think it's not working? Tough to put this together. Super tough to put this together. But of course, what's difficult about the conversation is that there's so many people in the conversation who do think, like, if you commit a crime, you should be punished. Like, there's this great video of the former head, like the minister of prisons in Britain, right? She went to these Nordic prisons and she was like walking around taking a look at what they do in these Nordic prisons. And she herself was saying, like, these Nordic prisons have the best recidivity rate, which is to say when people are released, they don't come back, right? Which is what you want. That's the goal, isn't it? The goal is so that when people are released, they don't come back, right? Assuming because they don't do crime anymore. And as she was going through the Nordic prisons, she was just like constantly aghast. She'd be like, "Where are the bars?" And there's no bars, right? They treat them like people. They treat them like people who have gone astray, who have found themselves in a spot, right? And who need to be given like a new lease on life or a new positioning. But the whole time she was walking around just being like, "You let people do this? You let people get," and like things like people, like there was a recording studio where people could make music and sing and like record their stuff. And she was like, that doesn't sound like these people should be punished. They're criminals, right? And that's the minister of prisons from Britain, like the highest level person being in prisons, like going into the prisons that are doing it the best and then acting aghast. And you're just like, hey, like, is it really just that you think like people who do crimes or people who find themselves in positions where they're doing crimes are just subhuman? Is that really what it is? Like there's no connecting? Yeah, so more of a rehabilitation facility. I mean, that's what we're seeing in Norway and Finland and these places that have the most successful rates. Yeah, you're not there to punish these people. Like, they need to be isolated out of the civil society. But, like, ask them why it's gone down that way. And realize that chances are good it has something to do with the circumstances of their community and their society. Right? Like, this idea that the individual is more powerful than every other individual collectively combined is asinine. Right? Like, I, as a single individual, have more to do with what happens in my community than the entire rest of the community combined. Like, that's what these guys, like, that's what these Petersons and these Shapiros and all these hacks are saying. Right? They're saying out loud in front of you, over and over again, that one person being me, is more powerful and more overwhelming than every other individual combined. It's incoherent and arrogant, frankly. Or maybe not Marxist or narco-communist, but materialist and anti-materialist. Yeah. Obviously, people will defend themselves against murderers, but there are plenty of ways to deal with this other than the current judicial system. Police are rather modern. Yeah, and also, like the American system, like the American prison system, is very strictly not interested in rehabilitation or any of this. It's interested in slavery. Like, it wants serfs. It wants slaves. That's what it wants. It wants to incarcerate people for their entire lives so they can work. Like, that's what it wants. And it's not interested in justice. It's not interested in any of that. It's interested in kidnapping people off the streets, charging them with petty offenses. Like, for God's sakes, there are cases where police will just, like, arrest people and then say they were resisting arrest. And then that person will serve, like, 5 years for resisting a arrest for no reason, for nothing. Right? Like, I can't imagine why they're resisting arrest. It's hard to answer such a question without living in such a hypothetical communist world, and then according to the details of the hypothetical. Yeah, exactly. That too. Hey, Jennifer, I don't know if I've ever seen you in here. Good to see you. I said then and I say now that while there is a lower class, I am in it, and while there is a criminal element, I am of it, and while there is a soul in prison, I am not free. Eugene V. Debs. Debs was such a fucking baller, dude. He's such a goddamn baller. Yeah, rehabilitation prevention. Norway, Scandinavian country, have pretty good system too. Have a good one, Mocked. Thanks for being here, bud. Yeah, the money goes to their head very quickly. Good to see you, Matthias. Yeah, it's all personal responsibility, but take no account for outside pressures. Well, and you'll notice that it's all personal responsibility, which is great because I'm rich. Right? Like, literally, like, this. First of all, someone like Shapiro, right? Like, who literally thinks magic is real. He's, like, born to wealthy parents and, like, has never worked a day in his life. Like, if you're taking life advice from this guy, like, you're already pretty far behind, right? But then take a look at someone like Peterson, right? Like, you would think that someone like Peterson is like, oh yeah, sure, he like went to the university, and sure, like, he went to university during the period of time when, like, university was cheap, and like, oh, I guess so that's one thing. But he did do it, and he worked up and all this kind of stuff. Like, his family is a family of ranchers. They literally own the land they live on today because of the Canadian Dominion Act, where you could move out to the prairies and receive 360 acres of free land. Literally. His family is living on land given to them for free by the government, and he's walking around saying, oh, it's all about your own individual responsibility. Like, that is a type of delusional detachment that you gotta work hard to cultivate. Putting people in prison won't help you if you don't train them and relapse in the same environment you took them from. Yeah. Just be born into wealth, bro. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Just be born rich. Like, what's the problem? From the National Observer. We can't leave Canada's housing crisis up to the provinces. At a time when governments are still facing the challenges presented by the ongoing global pandemic, to say nothing of the financial repercussions associated with efforts to address it, you can understand why something like soaring housing prices would tumble down their list of priorities. After all, more than 2/3 of Canadians own homes, and they aren't particularly interested in entertaining the idea of the value of their single biggest asset going down. That makes it hard to have a meaningful conversation about the negative impact of rising prices on the lives of millions of Canadians. Never mind talking about ways to reverse it. Mix in the reality that housing policy mostly falls under provincial and municipal jurisdiction, and it's easy to see why the federal government, and to be clear, many successive federal governments, hasn't put housing at the top of its political to-do list. But after COVID-19 dumped a fresh load of gasoline on the fire that is Canada's housing market, it should be clear to all but the most myopically self-interested homeowner that we have an uncontrollable crisis on our hands. Housing prices have increased 50% nationwide over just the last 5 years. And it's no longer just places like Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal driving the surge. The latest leg up has seen the suburbs and exurbs of those overheated markets posting equally ludicrous price gains as potential homeowners get priced out of the big cities and try to find a foothold in the surrounding communities. After dipping below $500,000 during the early stages of the pandemic, the average home price in Canada hit $720,000 in November, a new high. Municipal and provincial governments have key roles to play here, but whether it's on zoning issues or supporting the development of more supply, but the federal government has the biggest and best arrow in its quiver, and it's long past time it started using more of them. The recently announced 1% tax on vacant or underused housing owned by non-residents is a start, but it's only expected to raise $20 million in its first year. A rounding error on a rounding error when it comes to the size of Canada's housing market. Chrystia Freeland's new mandate letter as finance minister also directs her to impose an anti-flipping tax on properties that aren't held for at least 12 months. These are mere branches when much heavier sticks are required. And every day the federal government nibbles at the edge of this problem is another day it gets bigger and more difficult to deal with. Yes, Canada has its first federal minister of housing ever, in Ahmad Hussein, but he's still without his own department and is responsible for other duties in his role. His title includes diversity and inclusion. That's why it's time to reconstitute the Department of Urban Affairs, one that existed briefly in the 1970s before getting phased out by the Liberal government of the time. And while we're at it, let's give it real teeth and the ability to actually take a bite out of the housing crisis. There are lots of ways it could do that, from more investing in public housing to elevating the importance of renting and renters, but regardless of which policy path it chooses to follow, it has to stop habitually passing the buck to other jurisdictions. Ironically, it was more than 50 years ago, under the leadership of the first Prime Minister Trudeau, that Canada initially tried to address a brewing national housing crisis. After winning party leadership in 1968 and forming a majority government later that year, Trudeau appointed his former rival, Paul Hellyer, to chair a task force on housing and urban development. But Hellyer resigned from his cabinet after his report, which meant his series of ambitious recommendations, including far more federal involvement in the housing file, fell on deaf Liberal ears. The Prime Minister himself didn't believe it was appropriate for the federal government to intrude on provincial jurisdiction. In time, and with pressure from the right places, he relented, and a brief golden age of federal involvement in Canada's housing market was born, one whose legacy can still be seen today in some of our aging cooperative housing projects. We need a much longer golden age now. As Hellyer wrote in his report, it was illogical, if not inconceivable, that the government of Canada could have ministries dealing with fisheries, forestry, veterans affairs, and other matters which involve a minority of the population, but none to deal on a full-time basis with the urban problems which involve more than 70% of the population, not to mention housing, which involves virtually everyone. Those urban problems have become more intractable in the decades since Hellyer tabled his report, and now involve much more than 70% of the population. History may not have repeated itself in 2021, but it's hard not to hear it rhyming here. Would potential federal intrusion on their jurisdiction bother the provinces? Almost certainly. But we're long past the point where that can be used as a justification for inaction. Our biggest cities are in the process of committing a form of economic suicide, one in which the young people and new residents who create and sustain their vitality are being priced out of existence. It may be too late to reverse all the damage caused by the surge in house prices, but the federal government must step in before more is done and more ground is lost in the process. We're not going to get that out of these liberals. Like, period. Like, these guys are walking around being like, yeah, 1% tax on vacancies, that'll do it. Yeah, 1% tax. Yeah, that's serious. Yeah, absolutely. People will definitely change what they do because of a 1% tax. Like, is the reason why people vote for these liberals is because they think Trudeau is dreamy? Like, is that really what it is? Like, I really think it is just that. That there's, like, a large enough segment of the populace who are just like, he's so dreamy. And that's it. Like, that's as far as they've gone. They're like, yas queen, she session. Like, that's it. Like, it really does seem like that's where we're at. Like, here is how I would resolve the housing crisis if I were the Prime Minister. I would open up a wicket at every Service Canada. People would walk in the front door of Service Canada. They would walk up and be like, hello, I do not have a house. And the person at the wicket would go, you do not have a house. Let me take your information, Canadian citizen. And they would go to the person who has 1,000 houses. And they would say, hey, person who has 1,000 houses, we are taking one of your houses and we are giving it to this Canadian citizen. And should the person with 1,000 houses complain about it, we say, too bad. And that's it. That's the whole fucking conversation. And people look at me and they'll be like, well, that'll collapse the rental market then. Okay. I'm completely fine with that. No. I don't care at all. A person should have a home. A person should have a home. It should be baked into our Constitution. That it should be the responsibility of our government to ensure that every single person in the society has a home. And if they don't, then we build one or we find an empty one and we give it to them. No, we don't put them on a payment plan. No, we don't do any of that. We literally give it to them. Oh, John, you're going to destroy the housing market. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care about your pathetic, stupid little housing market. Like, I don't care at all. Person doesn't have house, give them house. Like, literally. And it is that easy. Like, that is how communist nations have eliminated housing. Like, housing crisis and homelessness. There's literally a place where a person can walk in and say, hello, I do not have a home. And they go, oh dear, let us give you one. And the conversation ends. It is over. And it's easy to do. Like, you don't need to fuss, you don't need to fanatic, you don't need to get financialization or financial markets involved. There's no free market. Oh, you don't have a home. Here's one. First they came for your 1,000 houses. I mean, yeah, right? Like, that's exactly what these guys will do. I'm so looking forward, like, if we actually do manage to get, like, a critical mass of people to be able to take these psychopaths down, I'm so looking forward to hearing them cry. Like, I'm so looking forward to it. Like, I want to taste their tears. I want to collect their tears in a cup and drink them in front of them, right? Like, these people are fucking psychotic losers. Like, their misery will bring me nothing but joy because, like, they've lost the capacity to be reasonable. Like, for real, their argument actually genuinely is, it is bad that you took away one of my empty houses that I don't use or need, and that person should sleep on the streets. That's literally their argument. Like, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Like, guys, I cannot stress. If I became the Prime Minister of Canada, I would not even attempt to, like, be political with these people. Like, I wouldn't try to, like, say the rosy colored thing to be like the thing. Like, I literally would, like, or someone would ask me a question, right? Like a news guy would ask me a question, and I would literally just be like, those people should shut the fuck up and be quiet. Get the fuck out. Like, that is how I would talk to these people, because they're worthless parasites who need to be chased out of the conversation completely. Like, you're trying to punish success. Yes, I'm trying to punish successful psychopaths, you psychopath. Shut the fuck up. Like, I'm so tired of these people. Like, they are literally arguing in favor of homelessness, in favor of grinding poverty, so that they can have another 1,000th house. Like, shut the fuck up. The constant threat the elite will take their money and go home smells like blackmail to me. Well, and again, like I my favorite is like, well, if you do that, then we'll just leave. And my response is like, good, great, perfect. That's what we hope, actually. We hope that you will leave. Like, you are worthless. Like, do you not understand that? Like, that is like a parasite saying, if you take medicine, I'll leave. And it's like, yeah, that's the point. Like, that's the whole idea, right? Like, we want you to leave. We would prefer if you stopped interacting with the society. Yeah, thank you. Like, oh, grumble. Bye-bye. 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 Like, take away their assets. Take away their wealth. And for a lot of them, make it so that they can no longer interact meaningfully with any of these systems. That they cannot donate money to political parties, that they cannot invest money in businesses, that they cannot be part of the society in any meaningful way. And if they complain, we just say, get a job. And that's it. Like, these people are psychopathic losers. Oh, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. No, I'm not interested. Barnabas. Fucking God. But CC solving homelessness might cut into the military and police budgets. Oh no! Yes, has a home and not a cockroach pit with no plumbing. A real home, yeah. And it's not hard. Like, it isn't. It actually isn't difficult to do. Oh, empty house. Person who needs house. Oh, complaining billionaire. We don't care. Like, we don't care at all. And I'm tired of these politicians pretending like these billionaires matter. Get rid of them. Be gone. Yeah, it's been 0 days since the last cop-related black shooting. Yeah. And, like, here is the loser of the next provincial election, right? And you can see pretty clearly why she's going to lose here. Like,
these seniors have already gone through so much. They literally watched residents that are in the same rooms with them lose their lives to COVID-19. They have been shut in to their rooms for inordinate amounts of time without seeing any family members. Some of them have weathered COVID-19 already and are scared to death about what might be happening this time around, as are their family members.
What happens when there are no staff? There is no care. So the conditions of work directly involve and relate to the conditions of care. And we know that with staffing collapses, these residents are neglected. We are hearing of residents that are being sent to hospitals because there's not enough care to provide for them in the homes. And then we are seeing infections, we are seeing UTIs, we are seeing bed sores, we are seeing all the same things that we saw before that can indeed become septic and become life-threatening.
This government has never made the investments, has never wanted to spend the money to get out ahead of this virus and its movement. And in long-term care, we saw that tragically, and the results of that for the entire COVID-19 pandemic thus far, and we're seeing it again.
Like, I don't know what it is with these NDP. Like, it's like a singing frog syndrome, right? Like, you guys know the singing frog, right? Like, all the words she said were great and all. When she was and we gotta and then it's like a camera goes on them, and they just lose the ability to make basic articulations. Like, Andrea Horwath looks weak. Like, she looks weak. Like, really weak. And she's gonna lose this election. Like, I just don't see a path for her. Like, this is her election. This is her shot. But at the end of the day, she's a very weak leader who keeps standing up and making, like, proclamations that are weak. And we're all just like, meh. Like, I guess if the choice is between a guy who literally wants to drown, like, if you're treading water and there's someone who's like, I'm going to put my hand on your head and hold you underwater until you drown to death, or there's somebody who's like, no, I won't hold my hand on your head and push you down until you drown to death. And then you look at them and you're like, but you're going to get me out of the water, right? And then they're like, we'll look into that. Like, that's the NDP. Like, get these people out of the fucking water. Like, it's pretty straight fucking forward, right? Get them out of the fucking water. Like, make it so they're not drowning. Like, give them a raft. Give them a life jacket. Give them a log. Give them a series of sticks. Do anything. Do something. But these NDP are just not fucking interested. Like, they're not. Like, they're just orange liberals. They're just interested in looking like they're interested. That bleach blonde from your video is Dr. Vivian Stephanopoulos, who intentionally abstained and obstructed a working class campaign in North Scarborough. Yeah, like, great, right? Like, the NDP, the working class party, you know? Like, there is nothing more humiliating under capitalism than being employed. People are waking up and don't want to be subject to bad relationships anymore. Yeah. Like, this is really how you want to live your whole fucking life? Like, it made sense when our parents were doing it, right? Because our parents were doing it and they got, like, houses and cars and shit. They actually got something tangible and material that made sense. Oh yeah, I worked this job and, you know, that's fine. I come back to, like, a nice house and I got, like, a kind of thing. Like, I'm turning 40 next year. I am never getting out. Like, that's never happening for me. Ever. Right? I could work 2 full-time jobs and it would never happen for me. I am watching my friends who are doctors, lawyers, engineers, professors, librarians, right? I've got a group of friends who are trying to go in with another couple, right? Like, they are a couple with a baby and they know another couple who wants to get together and have a baby of their own, and they're talking about all pooling in in order to buy a house together. Right? Like, boop, boop, it's done. Like, we're in crazy town. Like, we're in crazy fucking town. And these people should be able to walk into like a fucking Service Canada and be like, "Hi, house, please." And then, oh, I can't. Why aren't millennials having children? Why aren't millennials having children? Fucking Pope standing up and being like, "It is a sin to not have children." Like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, you fucking pedophile. Get the fuck out of here. Like, unbelievable to me that the Pope thinks he can stand up and wave his finger at us. Shut the fuck right up. Go fucking defend Jeffrey Epstein, you fucking pedophile. People started to live in trailers, so capitalists created the tiny house movement. Yeah, soon the tiny tent. Then the tiny life expectancy. Yeah, exactly, Grinning. Fucking exactly. Yeah, gone by 2040. Why some religions are declining in Canada faster than ever. Could have something to do with the fact that they refuse to actually acknowledge their own scriptures, right? Probably has a little something to do with the fact that like their own scriptures have something to say about like wealth distribution and how to treat people in civil society, and these religions just do not give a fuck. Honestly, to me, the number one reason why most religions are in decline is because they fit into two basic categories. Overt, outright, complete, total frauds. And those are your evangelical movements, right? And then capitulated cowards who do not confront these complete frauds, right? And just pay fealty to capital. Like, let's see what the article has to say, though. This will be fun. It's Advent Sunday, and snow is falling thick and fast outside the front doors of the soaring neo-Gothic bell tower of the Metropolitan United Church in downtown Toronto. That's a nice opening line, actually. Good for you. Ashley Stewart, that's a nice line, Ashley. Good for you. You should feel good about that line. A tiny crowd huddles around a black Weber grill, emitting brief puffs of smoke as a crackling fire battles the elements. This is good. This is good. She's got to stop writing this shit and start writing some like romance novels, right? Like the next line should be something like, Jennifer was recently broken up and looking for love. Instead we get, come gather around the holy barbecue, Reverend Jason Myers jokes. Still pretty good. It's a modern scene amid very modern challenges facing religious institutions in Canada. Religiosity in Canada is at an all-time low, with recently released data from Statistics Canada showing only 68% of Canadians 15 or older now report having a religious affiliation. It's the first time that number has dipped below 70% since StatCan began tracking the data in 1985. In response, Global News has spent the past 2 months speaking to members of religious communities across the country and looking at historical data to determine why this is happening. This is part of one of that series. It's important to note that this decline is not across the board. The number of Muslims, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Hindus is increasing. And StatsCan predicts the number of Canadians reporting a non-Christian religious affiliation could double by the year 2036. Christianity, however, is in sharp decline. In 2011, 67.3% of Canadians said they were affiliated with a Christian religion. In 2019, that number had dropped to 63.2%. Catholicism, Canada's largest denomination, now accounts for 32% of Canadians over 15, down from 46.9% in 1996. It makes sense that Canadians would be like doubling in with the Catholics, right? That makes sense, right? Why not just continue giving money to the pedophiles, right? The decline is even more precarious for Canada's Unity and Anglican Church. In 2021, the first Sunday in Advent, the season that commemorates Christmas, or the birth of Jesus Christ, has fallen in Toronto's first snow day, November 28th. Just 6 people have come to congregate around the Weber Grill for Metropolitan's Tattle Creek Wild Church, A more modern and nature-based service. How fucking long is this bullshit? No, too long. I'm not reading all this fucking shit. Because honestly, like, why are people declining? Because the fucking churches are abandoning us. Right? Here's the structure. Here's how it works. Okay? Vote liberal and conservative, i.e., people who maintain the system of poverty. Right? Or the wealth extraction project. Right? Then turn around and shake your finger at Canadians and say, there are poor people in our society. We need to help them. And then do what? Oh, throw a little grill for them. Right? Every Thursday, go to a fucking grill town. Right? And then take the rest of your money for yourself, send it off to the Pope so that he can organize another fucking pedophile game. Right? Like, that's the way it works. That's the structure of it. That they are simultaneously voting in favor of the system of poverty because they require the system of poverty to exploit. If suddenly there were no poor people in the society, these churches, where are we going to get our money from? Right? Where are we going to get our money from? Like, I'm so fucking over with these, like, especially the Christians. Like, the just total fucking, like, to an individual. To an individual. Like, the evangelicals are absolutely the worst. Like, these are the guys that think capitalism is actually, like, the will of Jesus and all this kind of crazy shit. Like, what they're doing is overt heresy. Like, it's overt. Like, literally read their own book. But like the Anglicans and the Unitarians and like the people who are supposedly on the left are like not much better, right? First of all, they refuse to actually fight against these evangelicals and call them out for the fraudulent frauds that they actually are. Because in the end, they're doing the same game, right? Like, there's just no reason to buy into this shit anymore. Makes sense that when we do, though, it's Catholic. Got to make sure that your money is really being used to hurt people. At like the most it can hurt people, right? Got to really like abuse children with that money. You shall also love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Yep. Cursed is anyone who withholds justice from the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow. Then all the people shall say amen. I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I mean, it is harder, or it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Like, it's like explicitly stated by their leader. Like, hey, maybe rich people are bad. Probably. Quit inventing communist Bible lines, comrades. No, like, I mean, the early Christians were communists. Like, they fucking were. They all got together. They distributed their goods to one another, right? Everybody could use anything and everything, right? Like, they had a communal community. Like, these ideas are not new, right? They just kind of get formalized under Marx. Because Marx understood, like, why is it that it's, like, people like me who are saying, hey, maybe we should create a society that eliminates poverty systemic. Where are the churches? Where are they? Right? And I have attempted to organize with churches along these lines. They refuse. They will not organize. Yeah, exactly. Like, people who are not part of the, like, actual system, right? People who exist sort of on the outside of it, like Chris Hedges. Cornel West is a bit different, but like Huey Long, yeah. But like, meanwhile, the Pope is standing up and being like, millennials should have more babies. Get fucked. Like, get fucked right out of here. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out what's going on. Like, if you abandon the populace, it will abandon you back. Right? Jesus says, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Exactly. Like, it's right fucking there. Like, you gotta work really hard. Like, this is why someone like Peterson is like a total fraud. Right? He's like a complete and total fraud. Because he walks around talking about Judeo-Christian principles and all, and oh, we're losing our values and all this kind of stuff. He doesn't read that book, and he doesn't care to. Right? He just wants you to think that he's read it and that he understands it. Right? And then when he does talk about it, he gets into like this, like, oh, the archetypal, this, that, and the other things. Like, literally your leader, Jesus Christ himself, said out loud on several occasions, give your money to the poor. You're just going to not talk about that. That's just not part of the conversation whatsoever. Like, these people are complete and total frauds. Like, like as fraudulent as any fraud that has ever existed in our society ever. They are selling snake oil, right? And the worst ones are the people who are walking are the Christians, like the priests and these guys who are walking around pretending to be fucking holy, right? Like these people are benefiting from a system of slavery and poverty, right? And they know it. They know they are. Right? And are they trying to galvanize people into street protests? Are they trying to actually assert, no, separation of church and state? Oh, that's convenient. That's pretty fucking convenient. And the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. And don't forget his first statement either. Right? Like, once you understand the concept of what God is within the Christian faith, the statement of love the Lord your God with all your heart is not much different than saying, give a shit about your environment. Love the world. Love the natural world that has been created. Like, this place was created so that we could live in it. It's got air, water. The place grows food. For fuck's sake. And we're doing everything we can to shove wedges in between it. Right? To just like grow like a cancer cell. And we're going to kill the host. Or the host is going to kill us. Lenin was Jesus reborn, confirm. I mean, the narrative is that Jesus does like come back, right? The second coming, right? Ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Oh yeah, James is a baller. Like, James is a baller book, man, for sure. Like, I keep telling people, man, actually read that book. Like, you're going to find out really quickly that every practitioner, no exceptions, every practitioner is a complete and total fraud. And you're going to figure that out instantly just by doing like one cursory read of the Bible. Right? Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. I mean, that's a very controversial passage. And because if you read it by yourself, it's always misunderstood that Christ was like going to war. But like, it's pretty easy to see that he's saying like, because what is peace when you are living in an oppressive empire? Well, it's slavery. Like, it's oppression. That Christ's narrative is a narrative of struggle and fight against this oppressive empire, and they crucify him for it, right? They crucify him for his struggle against the empire. So like, yeah, I'm not coming to bring subservience or to tell you to bow your head. Can someone group every communist phrase Jesus said? I mean, yeah, they did. It's called the Bible. If you want to see some of his, some of Christ's speeches or lectures, read Matthew. Matthew is the one that has the most of those. The Sermon on the Mount. Just search up the Sermon on the Mount. That's where most of his actual speeches are given, or sermons. I love posting Bible verses without references and getting attacked for their content. That kind of shit keeps me going. Out of context. I mean, yeah, context does matter. And the reality is Christ was living in an empire that ultimately crucified him. You want to go to peace with that? How do you? Exactly. How do you? We're talking about an overthrow. We're talking about a revolution. And so was Christ. But you are correct that particular line has been used by the ruling class and by emperors throughout time to justify invasions and all kinds of stuff. Because, they don't actually read these things or seek to understand them. Right? Oh, Jesus came to bring a sword, and I've got a sword. Me, the ruler that Christ was very specifically working against, has a sword. And clearly when Christ said, I don't come to bring peace but a sword, he wasn't talking about empowering the underclass to fight against an empire. He was certainly talking about an empire spreading the empire. Right? That's accurate? You don't want to know who Christ is talking to or what social position he's talking about, right? None of that matters. Maxime Bernier leads protests against COVID-19 health measures and vaccination mandates. People's Party of Canada and this But this is exactly how Maxime Bernier is going to increase his power, right? As our political class, I was talking about it earlier, right? That our political class is just going to keep lying to us, and there is going to come a point where they are going to use COVID as a way to try to keep us suppressed and isolated so that we won't do exactly this, right? And what's scary about the PPC, in my view, is that these guys, it's so odd to me. Whenever I talk to these guys, they sound like communists. They do. They're against globalization. They're against sort of what's happening in their society. They are actually ahead of the Liberals, Conservatives, and NDP because they are at least acknowledging that something has gone wrong, right? On the scale that I'm talking about. But then their solutions, right? Their solutions, their solutions are literally oh, you just need to subserviate yourself to the billionaire class harder. Get a better job, that kind of rhetoric. And it's just and they don't have any understand. The ruling class actually framed Jesus as a lamb in order for the underclass to emulate so they wouldn't rise up. Yeah, there's probably a lot to that, honestly. The ruling class will always co-opt things like this, always, and attempt to use it for their own benefit. So even if Christ was a revolutionary figure, which he certainly was, they'll absolutely co-opt. And that's exactly what happened to Christianity. At the 3rd century, right, they literally stopped persecuting the Christians, and then they created a council where they excluded a lot of the literature, like the Gnostics, for example. And then they used it for themselves in order to spread their own ideology around, right? But the rise of Christianity did achieve one thing. And I always do point this out, right? We used to crucify people in public We did that. That was a real thing that we did. And we don't anymore. And it's because of the story of Christ. Like, Constantine bans the practice of crucifixion, citing Christ. So, that's nice, right? It takes an entire movement as well as a cultural reformation in order to get people to stop nailing us to posts. That's good, right? Baby steps. Western society. Now we just crucify them online. I mean, it's very different. Very different. Like, we are going to see something, though. Like, we're going to see some kind of public act. Like, as if the, like, public execution of George Floyd, for example, wasn't bad enough. But there will come a time where the ruling class will seek to publicly punish people who fight back against the state. Like, you think about somebody like Julian Assange, right? That's happening very much behind the scenes. Like, that's happening very much, like, off on the side, right? But there will be a moment when the ruling class gets a hold of someone like Julian Assange, right? And will publicly punish him. Like, that's what the story of Christ is all about. As it stands as a warning, and that's the reason why the symbol of the cross is used by the Christians as a way to tell us to never forget. Like, we can go back there. Like, we can get to that point again. For sure we can. It's a very thin divide. Oh yeah, it shut them up. For sure it did. Oh yeah, they're super fascist. I don't want to join them, but it would be a good troll to make a point. I mean, I don't think that they are, like, they're certainly not intentionally fascist. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Like, they don't have a handle on what the structure, they don't have, like, a materialist analysis of the society. Like, that's a big thing, right? And, like, because they don't have a materialist analysis of the society, like, they just kind of end up being white supremacists as a default. You know what I mean? Like, they keep talking about unity, right? And it's like, yeah, what they mean is subservience. Like, that's what they mean, is a subservience to, like, a white supremacist nation. Like, that's what they actually mean. Because they don't want people actually bringing up, like, they'll say of, like, the residential schools, they're the people that are saying, well, I didn't do that. Like, that's not, I didn't have any responsibility for that. And then you say to them, like, right, but the systems that those people erected are still around. And then they're like, oh, systemic whatever, huwaka, right? And they just deny the existence of systems. And, like, what's going to happen if a group of people who deny the existence of systems themselves take control of the system? It's very likely that they will just destroy it, if only on accident, right? Oh yeah, no, we're not a superior society or empire, no. I mean, we're not nailing people to posts in the middle of town square. We got that one thing going for us, right? We got that one thing. Like, crucifixion was brutal, dude. Like, crucifixion was, like, absolutely, like, imagine our society. Like, imagine what we do in our society, except when we arrest, like, imagine we arrested someone like George Floyd and we literally nailed him to a post and put him up in the center of Times Square and just said, like, there you go. This, yeah, drone bombing is brutal, dude. You're right about that. You are right about that. Like, it, and there is a parallel to it, for sure. For sure. One that could be made, yeah, Gitmo. You're right about that, too. You're right about that. That we perhaps are just, like, in a pre-empire phase. That, like, the Roman Empire existed for a long time without crucifying people at home, right? That it would crucify people on the outskirts, right? In like the Gaulish Empire. And so they haven't just brought that home yet. And so we're like in the pre-phase of that. That the drone bombings and like the Gitmo. Well, and this is like, we know that there are like there was a torture site, like a black site in Chicago. Like, we know that that was happening. I think the big switch, like what I'm trying to focus on here, like the big switch on it, is that we're still living in kind of a dynamic where it's not being done publicly and in front of us brazenly. You know what I mean? Like everything is being done kind of in the shadows or off on the side or in another country. And there's like an obfuscation to it. You know, like the media is obfuscating it or omitting it or not pretending like it doesn't happen. Like that kind of stuff. Whereas there's going to be a flip. There's going to be a flip where it's going to be done, and it's going to be done publicly, brazenly, openly, and the media will report on it and say, so you better listen to the state. And that'll just be it. That'll be the way it is. Right? Like, and so we're in like a phase where it's where we're like still in the kind of illusionary or like we're in the pretend part of it. And there's going to come a moment where it's just done openly, and the response will be, well, what are you going to do about it, Jack? Like, you listen to the state. You want to get nailed to the post? And that'll be it. That'll be the way that we're communicated to. The PPC all claim to be sovereign citizens at their rallies to get out of charges. Then the PPC candidate in my riding mentioned how he'd take away indigenous sovereignty and make them all get jobs. Yeah, like that's like, so he's like literally going to declare a war. Right? Like but that's how dumb these guys are. Like, that's dumb. Like, that's not going to work, bud. Like, it's not gonna work. And like you're outright just like stating we're just gonna commit a genocide against these people. Like, that's a declaration of an intent to do a genocide, is what that is. Take away indigenous sovereignty and make them all get jobs. Sounds like enslavement to me, right? Sounds like the destruction of a people and the enslavement of their population to me, right? Like, pretty black and white, that kind of statement. But that's just it. They do think that will help them, right? Because they don't understand systems. They don't have a materialistic or historical critique of the society, and they don't understand systems. They don't think systems exist, right? And if you don't think systems exist at all, then almost by definition, if you're given control of that system, you will destroy it. Just even if it's unintentional. Crucifixion was reserved for people who rebelled against the state and were not citizens. Generally, it was only slaves, but then became anyone living in their territories. Yeah. That's why Paul was able to get away with a lot of what he did, because he was a Roman citizen. And it's also likely why Paul's writings were the ones that were able to proliferate the most, because he was a citizen. Yeah, and never talk to a person of color or indigenous person in their lives. Yeah. Well, and also, like, there's also, like, the problem of universalization, right? Which is, like, my lived experience is the universal lived experience, right? Like, what I have experienced is the experience. And nobody has ever had any experience other than the experience that I have had. Right? Which must be the case, because I don't acknowledge the existence of systems. And so my lived experience is the experience, which means that if a person is failing or homeless or something, well, it just means they didn't buck up enough. I worked hard. Look at where I am at. If I can do it, anyone can do it. There is no system. It's just about individual hard working. Right? Like, and these people are like this is the political power that is growing in Canada. And we're not taking them seriously as a political force, clearly. Like, and the idea that they can't seize power, sure they can. Like, sure they can. Yeah, they can seize power. Absolutely. Right? And if I was one of these corporate sociopaths, like if I was one of these corporate psychos, I would absolutely support these guys. Right? Oh, they want to destroy the only edifice left that is capable of standing up against my overwhelming power. Right? Like, these wealthy corporate oligarchs will eventually destroy these democratic structures. Because the democratic structure is the only way for people to fight against them. Right? Well, it's not the only way for people to fight against them, but it's the only way people have been convinced. And so, ultimately, if people start to take over the halls of power, they'll just destroy them. Right? All I'm saying is Christianity has been used for both good and evil. For every verse you give, I can give one example of imperialism, misogyny, for sure. No, it's just like anything, right? Like, if I take a hammer and cave someone's head in, right? Or if I take a hammer and put a nail in the wall, right? Is the hammer the problem? There's no reason at all to think someone else would be worse than it is now. I mean, there is a certain degree of acceleration. Maybe I'll put it that way, right? Like, the liberals aren't, like, actively accelerating the climate change crisis. You know what I mean? Like, for sure the PPC would accelerate the climate change crisis because there's no systems, right? There's no systems, so climate change doesn't exist, right? In my opinion, religions are an indoctrination into psychosis, which, I mean, is a legitimate thing to say. Like, the religious institutions, for example, are completely into that. And absolutely, like, in many ways, the Christian churches were erected as an alternative form of government or an alternative power structure that the empire couldn't deal with. So you had, so it was like you had multiple spheres of power in your society. You had what turned into the monarchs, and then you also had the clergy, right? So there was, the argument would be that there was like a balancing, but it just turned into different power groups vying for control of the society. And my argument always when it comes to the Bible, right, is that it should be read as a secular document, right? It was written by humans during a period of time, right? And each book is written in its own time for its own group to represent its own thing. Like, but read it like it's Shakespeare. Read it like it's fucking Harry Potter if it helps you. And there's like really, really good shit in there. Like it is an important cultural document. And have psychos used it in order to push forward their own agenda? Yeah, sure. Like, I'm sure that they would do that to fucking Shakespeare or Harry Potter if it worked, right? Like if people let them do it, sure. Blessed is the one who grabs your little children and smashes them against a rock. Is that actually a verse? Hold on, bro. That seems wrong. Psalm 137:9. First of all, blessed shall he be who takes your little ones and dashes them against a rock. Whoa. Okay. Wow, it's been a while. How did I miss this one? By the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept when we remember Zion. There on the poplars we hung our harps, for there our captors asked us for songs. Our tormentors demanded songs of joy. They said, "Sing us one of the songs of Zion." How can we sing the songs of the Lord while in a foreign land? If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you, if I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy. Remember, Lord, what the Edomites did on the day Jerusalem fell. Tear it down, they cried, tear it down to its foundations. Daughter Babylon, doomed to destruction, happy is the one who repays you according to what you have done to us. Happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks. Okay, baller. Baller. Yeah, metal. Super metal. Right? Just like literally like, you fucked with us, we fuck with you. Eesh. After the first, are they slaves at that point? Yeah. Yeah. They were slaves in Babylon. Yeah. The Babylonians came, enslaved them, brought them into Babylon, and then there's a big story about how they're released from Babylon and they return back to their ancestral lands. Like, this narrative of the Jews going back to their ancestral lands has happened several times in history, in fact. It's an interesting narrative that continuously seems to come up for them. And oddly doesn't always work out. One might say it's a cycle. Jared's finding all the fucking metal stuff, like that guy from like Samuel L. Jackson's character from Pulp Fiction. Yeah, I don't really know anything about that verse. It just sounds like a baller thing to say before I shoot a guy. Oh yeah, or the story of God. See, this one bugs me. Okay, the story of God sending a she-bear to maul 29 kids for calling his prophet bald. Okay. Because, no, you retracted it, JC. I saw that. This story gets a lot of traction, right? And it gets traction. So the story is it Isaiah or Ezekiel? No, it's not Ezekiel, so it's Isaiah. Or is it Elisha? Dang it. God sends bears... Yeah, to maul. Which one was it? I gotta get the name. He turned around. Come on. Elisha. There we go. So Elisha. Like, Elisha is so 42 kids, okay? So Elisha is wandering in the wilderness, as a prophet does, right? And he stumbles upon, right, a group of 42 kids. The book says 42 children, right? Who are alone in the wilderness. All right? They start to mock Elisha, calling him names like Baldy, right? Or Bald, right? And then Elisha summons some bears, or a bear, who fucks them up. 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled them, right? And what bugs me about this interpretation, that people are like, oh, goodness, what a horrible thing. So it pretends as though like 42, it's like 42 babies. That's what it is. It's pretending like there's 42, like, oh, haha, he's bald. Haha, let's go get ice cream. No, bro. Like, abso-fucking-lutely not. This is a gang of wilderness children, right? This is a gang of fucking children living in the wilderness, right? 42 of them. 42 of them. So, and they're coming towards Elisha and aggressively mocking him, probably following him, pursuing him. And sure, are the insults lame? Sure, the insults are lame. Is the intent lame? Is the intent lame? Probably not. Right? Probably not. Like, do you think it's 42 kids going, haha, Baldy, okay, bye? Or do you think it's like people, like kids being like, hey, Baldy, what's going on? I'm gonna fucking beat you up and take your shit with my 42 friends. Like, that's what bugs me about the interpretation that gets levied against this verse in particular. Because it's like, you gotta work really hard to pretend like these 42 kids are just like innocent babies. You really gotta work hard to pretend like 42 boys, right, harassing an old man out in the wilderness isn't going to result in violence. Like, you've got to really work really, really fucking hard. Like, is it a brutal story? Yeah, the Old Testament's fucking brutal. Like, the Old Testament's fucking brutal, right? Because it's a story that comes out of our brutal past. Like, we are talking monkeys, for God's sakes. And a lot of the Bible is just about how do we fucking organize this shit, right? But it drives me crazy when people bring this one up as if it's supposed to be like a condemnation of the text. I'm like, what are you talking about? There's way worse shit than this, if you ask me. Like, when I read this, I hear a story about 42 gang members, right? No. See, exactly what you just said there, JC. You got to work harder to pretend calling someone a name. Like, they're going to beat up Elisha and kill him. Right? That's the inference. Right? Like, why are they even pursuing him? Why are they even talking to them? Why are they even harassing him? Because that's what they're doing. They're harassing him. What, you think that they're just, like, throwing a little pebble at him or, like, doing all this? No. They're going to beat him up, kill him, and take his stuff. Like, that's obviously what's going to happen here. Right? That's what bugs me about this story. Is that, like, the framing of it is treated as if it's like 42 babies sitting around eating ice cream, being like, oh, hey, he's bald. Ha ha. Bears! Like, that's the story. Instead of 42 men surrounding an old man with the desire to kill and rob him. Right? Like, that's a very different framing. And one that I think is a little bit more legitimate when you understand that they're in the wilderness. There's 42 boys just living in the wilderness, being in the wilds. Like, what, do you think they're nice? Do you think they're good? Do you think they're trying to help people? Like, chances are really good that Elisha felt as though he was going to be killed. Right? I feel like I would feel that way if there were 42 boys pursuing me in the wilderness who felt like calling me names. And sure, you can, like, pretend like the name calling is limp. Like, you said, aha, Baldy, like, if you'd like. But, like, the very fact that they're aggressively pursuing him and calling him names, like, if anything, this is an act of self-defense. Like, and yeah, bears mauling boys, it's not a good look, but it's by far, like, not even close to the worst thing that happens in the Bible. Like, you want worse than this? I'll give you worse. How about the book of Job? How about the fucking book of Job, where God literally murders Job's entire family, burns down his house and his crops, right? Infects him with boils, including boils on the bottom of his feet and his ass, so he can never escape from them, right? And why? Prove a thing with a bet with the devil. Devil came up and was like, oh, Job only likes you because you're nice to him. And God's all like, oh, I'll show you. I'll fuck his life up completely, kill everybody, destroy him totally, and he'll still love me. And guess what? Job does. You know why? Because at the end of the book, Job says to God, they have a conversation at the end of the book, where Job goes, hey, God, this sucked. This was bad. Why'd you do this? And God looked at Job, and you know what he said? He said, who the fuck are you exactly? Shut the fuck up. If I wanted to kill you, you'd be dead. Now get the fuck out of here. And Job went, yeah, okay. Like, people pretend like the Old Testament was like a glittering city, like a technoverse or whatever, or like it is now. These people are wilderness people. If you encounter 42 kids out in the wilderness, who are pursuing you with the intention and mocking you, chances are good they're going to kill and rob you. Like, and to me, that seems obvious. Like, it seems just obvious that that is the case. Like, stop pretending like they're sitting there with, like, ice cream cones being like, ha-ha, Baldy, ha-ha. That's fucking not how the situation went down. Like, fucking not. And, like, the fact that the book itself spends almost no amount of time on this story really tells you that that's the case. Like, chances are good that this, like, well known, like, yeah, there's, like, roving bands of, like, fucking boys going around. Uh-oh. And yeah, it's a brutal story, don't get me wrong, but the fucking book is brutal. There's, like, literally, like, daughters have sex with their parents. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah, where, like, they literally are going to rape Lot's daughters, right? Like, so they, like, burn the whole fucking city down. What are some of the other fucked up ones? There's a bunch. Like, the Bible's full of fucked up shit. Because humans are fucked up. Right? Like, and that's what makes it such an interesting book. Oh, yeah. Great. No, I'm not saying that, like, I'm not a fundamentalist. I'm not trying to say that the Bible is the book. I'm just saying that it should be a book. Right? And I feel like we get into a bit of a dilly of a pickle as a people because we have ceded authority on the Bible to the frauds. Right? Like, I think that's the long and short of my opinion when it comes to the Bible. Is that there are people walking around with the Bible saying, pretending as though they are the holders of the truth, and they don't read it. Like, they clutch so tightly to the Bible that they never open it up to read it. And literally, it's gotten to the point now that to completely undercut these people, all you have to do is read their book and cite it to them. Like, that's how weak these people are and how shit they are. And that's, like, how the conversation starts, in my view. Like, it's, why are we ceding authority of this book to these obvious overt grifters and frauds? Like, leftists should read this book in order to reclaim it from these frauds. So that when the frauds show up, we can literally tell them about their own fucking book and get rid of them. Like, that's my position on it. I'm not saying, like, read the Bible and Jesus will come down and kiss your forehead, and then when you die, you'll ascend up to heaven and enter the pearly gates and be surrounded by the Beatles, who will high-five you every single day. Like, that's... Oh, yeah, Tao Te Ching, yeah, for sure. For sure. Taoism, all that shit, for fucking sure. I actually recommend reading Tao Te Ching, if only to understand Asian culture better and, like, the Asian societies and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think that shit's great. God, it's been forever since I've read that book, though. I was, like, literally a teenager when I read that book. And I bet you anything it's one of these things where I, like, glazed it, and then my brain is like, yeah, you read that, and I'm like, did I, though? And, like, everything I've gotten from it has just been from, like, the culture at large. Now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. That's the Tower of Babel. This is actually kind of a fun game. Like, you guys, like, give me a quote and see if I can actually pick the book. Or maybe even the story. That's actually a lot of fun. Because I've read the Bible from cover to cover 4 times in my life. Jesus knew Yahweh, Jehovah, was a devil. He always referred to God as the Father. He never used the tetragrammatron. And he always referred to himself as the Son of Man, Son of God. He explicitly refused to say he was the Son of God, meaning Yahweh. Yeah. Now you know why there are 2 testaments. Oh, yes. And I mean, that is actually kind of like an interesting controversy that exists in Christianity, which is that, like, Jesus is God. And so but then the conversation becomes like, okay, but Jesus is a human. So if Jesus is a human and Jesus is also God, right? And this is what the Gnostics were starting to put together, and why I think it was important for the ruling class to get the Gnostics out of the conversation, which is that they were starting to say, wait a minute, if Jesus is God and Jesus is a human, then doesn't that make every human God, right? And like, if God is the collection of all things, and if God is in us and around us, and is of us and is sustaining us, then doesn't that make each and every one of us a divine being, living in divine energy? Right? Sounds familiar? Sounds like something I say, doesn't it? The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearl. She had a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things, and the filth of her adulteries. That has got to be, that's got to be Revelations. That's got to be Revelations, right? Like, that's Revelations talking about, like, the whore of Babylon, right? Like, it's, I forget her name. Am I right? I hope I'm right. And ye shall eat the bootiest like groceries, for just like the wealth, those cheeks shall also be spread among the masses. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, this was a fun one, man. I love talking about religion. I do. Nice. Yes. Thanks, JC. I love talking about religion. It's I actually, like, I have to talk about politics, right? Like, I have to talk about politics because politics is important. It's an important thing that we're doing. But boy, I love talking about religion because religion is like this constant ephemeral struggle, right? Where we're always, like, it sucks when the powerful politicize religion and create, like, use it to fulfill their political aims. That blows. But it's interesting to see the many ways that cultures have struggled with our existence and who we are. Is it not written in your law, I have said you are gods? It is written in your own scriptures that God said to certain leaders of the people, I say you are gods. What's the context on this? John, let's just go to John 10. The good shepherd and his sheep. So probably... Then came the festival of dedication at Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus was in the temple courts, walking in Solomon's colonnade. The Jews who were there gathered around him, saying, How long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly. Jesus answered, I did tell you, but you do not believe me. The works I do in my Father's name testify about me, but you do not believe because you are not my sheep. My sheep listens to my voice. I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they shall never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all. No one can snatch them out of my Father's hand. I and the Father are one. Again, his Jewish opponents picked up stones to stone him, but Jesus said to them, I have shown you many good works from the Father. Which of these do you stone me? We are not stoning you for any good work, they replied, but for blasphemy, because you, a mere man, claim to be God. Jesus answered them, Is it not written in your law, I have said you are gods? If he called them gods to whom the word of God came, and scripture cannot be set aside, what about the one whom the Father set apart as his very own, and sent into the world? Why then do you accuse me of blasphemy? Because I said I am God's son. Do not believe me unless I do the works of my Father. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and understand that the Father is in me, and I in the Father. again they tried to seize him, but he escaped their grasp. Yeah, so you can see, right? There's a struggling here of, like, I say at the end of every single one of these recordings, because I acknowledge it to be true, each and every one of you is a quantum being living in quantum energy. And you can see that there is a struggle, a constant struggle by power structures and the powerful in order to prevent people from understanding this about themselves. That we fall into this belief that we are just merely monkeys. We fall into this belief that we are a very reduced kind of a thing, when the truth is that we are connected to a larger energy. That we know that even through the secular sciences, which is why I use the word quantum instead of divine. Because we are connected to the quantum energy, which is a singular energy that underpins all of reality, which is precisely what the theologians throughout certainly Christianity, but also many religious ideologies, which is that we are within a singular energy. And one of the names that singular energy has been given is God. And so you have here Christ himself arguing that point. And you see what happens to him for it. Right? Where they try to stone him or they try to seize him. A force, one would say, that binds us and surrounds us. That's right. In my view, that's why Star Wars was as popular as it was, by the way. Because of, like, the Force. And, like, and there's something intrinsically truthful about this idea of, like, the Force. And also, magic is cool. Let's be really, really straight, okay? Magic is cool. Like, there's a reason we love it. We love it. There's a reason why, like, Christ has to do magic. There's a reason why, like, the prophets in the Old Testament were all doing magic and shit. It's because magic is fucking baller. We love it. Like, we fucking love it. Like, this idea that, like the modern superheroes, right? Like, these guys are just wizards. Like, they're just doing magic, right? We've just sort of supplanted, like, Tony Stark is, like, so smart that he can create any technology he wants, including, like, time travel. And I'm like, he is a wizard. Like, that's magic. Like, no, he's not that smart. No, he's not like a tech genius. It's just an excuse to give him magical powers. Like, that's it. Like, and it is as simple, in my view, as, like, we love magic. We just do. We just love this idea of, like, yeah, that guy, he can just shoot lasers. Don't worry about it. You know? And anybody who tries to, like, can you explain to me how he's shooting lasers? Like, my response is, like, no, shut up. That's why I hate it when they try to, like, explain the magic. Like, they introduce, like, midichlorians, or they, anytime I watch any of the new, like, any Terminator movie past Terminator 2, there's always, like, lengthy scenes where they're trying to explain the time travel. I'm just like, get rid of any of that. Stop trying to explain the magic to me. Like, it's magic. Story over, right? Like, I'm with you. Like, when they did the Star Trek reboot, which the Star Trek reboots were shit in my view, but I loved it because they, like, sent Spock back in time, right? And his explanation for how it happened was, yeah, we used red matter. That was it. They were just like, yeah, we used red matter and went back in time. And I was just like, you know what? I'm in. Let's go. Let's go, Brandon. Yeah, red matter. Done. Like, we want magic. We love magic. We love stories that have magic in them. If someone's telling you a story and then suddenly there's, like, literally a wizard that can do magic, you're just like, oh yeah, cool. Wizard that can do magic, sweet. Right? I've never met a single person in my life that is like watching a story or listening to a story and then some magic happens and they go, no, that's a problem. I'm like, no, shut up. Magic is cool. like, if you don't want magic in your story, like, and there are, like, every romance novel has a type of magic in it where you just like see a person and oh they're so, and then they see you and they're like, oh they're so, but we can't, there's a barrier, but our love sees through, and I'm like, that's magic. Like, that's a type of magic that you're describing, and it's fine. Like, we love it. We love magic. We love it. It's just like, especially when it comes to like the Bible and it comes to like those sorts of old books, we like get really fucking nerdy about it. Like, we get really like listening to theologians or people who are about the Bible debate the Bible is not much different than listening to like Star Trek people debate like which Star Trek is the best Star Trek, which book of the Bible is the best, right? It's the same kind of a thing, and it's like fine. The problem comes when people like take that stuff and then like bring it into the real world in order to like inflict it on other people. Like, that's the problem. Like, get the fuck out of here with your like cosplay shit. Like, if you want to go off over there and cosplay as like good Christians and follow your little book that you don't actually read, but like you could go do that. But like, if you're gonna bring it over here and be all like, my book tells me that everyone should do this, it's like, I don't care. Like, sorry. Like, I'll read your book. Like I said, that's fun. Like, but like, nah. I don't think I'm going to live my life based on what this one particular book has to say. Right? There's a lot of books. And many of them are very interesting. Right? And some of them are really shitty. Alright, guys. This comes to the end of this one. You see what happens if you bring up the Bible? You see what happens, guys? You bring up the Bible, or the Bible gets brought up, and suddenly the whole fucking thing is about the fucking Bible. Like, I mainly blame myself, I have to be honest. Anyway. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars, hoping that you never actually realize it. Because if you do, you're gonna be probably a little harder to enslave. Rebel, revolt, repent. Good luck. We're gonna need it.